Yeah, right. So, good evening, greetings, and welcome to a much delayed Jamboree. And welcome, friends. Thank you for being here. How are y'all doing?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm having this. Okay, yeah, Michael must be having a technical issue. I'm sure he'll be back. So, to my that direction is Autumn, who has not been on the screen as far as I've been ever been on camera with. But welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Hi.
Glad to see you here, and obviously Sister Danger down below, and oop, that way, that way, Raven. Hi, Raven.
Hi.
It's been a while. How you doing?
I am okay.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Yep. Are you all in the Christmas spirit?
Trying.
Trying to get there. It's hard this year. I don't know why. For
Yeah,
some reasons, I suppose.
There is agent of doubt.
yeah.
I want to be, but this year is hard.
Same. This has been the hardest year I've had in my life, or at least in so long. Maybe since my divorce. Definitely since my divorce. And I hate to delineate by the calendar, but I have much better feeling about next year for some reason. Even though it actually doesn't mean anything, it's just numbers that we've made up, and it's just this fucking Earth going around the sun. You know what I mean? But yeah.
No, I mean, I know I'm not the only one, and I don't know why this is. I mean, I'm not that, I don't know. I'm not a believer, but sometimes there are some weird coincidences like that. Like this year for me has been dog shit. Like this is a bad year. Um, like it was a bad fucking year, but like I just it's hard. Like I'm going through for the Christmas thing, right? It's hard to get in the Christmas spirit because I'm going through a divorce, and she kind of handled, you know, securing the presents, but we're not communicating anymore, and I haven't done that, and so I'm feeling like lost because I'm supposed to acquire things for these children, but I don't know what they need, and I don't know what she intends to provide to them, and so it's like, ugh.
Well, that sounds like a communication breakdown.
Oh, we don't even communicate at
Yeah.
all. So yeah, it's hard to get into it. I mean, and it's kind of like the icing on the cake of the whole year. I next year it's going to be better. Like there's a lot of things going on. I started this transition at the end of this year.
How long has it been now?
Well, I mean, I've been on HRT for not quite 3 months, I think, about there. I don't really see too many physical changes or anything. I mean, there's a little bit, but not like I'm not on the full dose yet. I'm like ramping up to it over the course of 9 months or something like that. That's going okay. I mean, it's like I started way before that though with a huge weight loss journey. I'm still on it. That part has been pretty great, but like, I have a target in mind and it's like I put in a lot of work for it. And I'm like, I put out to Facebook, I'm like, I'm sort of at the gay vampire stage, you know? You know what I mean? And it's like not the worst thing. And the weirdest thing ever that I've learned I had way different assumptions baked into this, like way off. Like I was terrified of being alone or whatever forever, like forever alone. Yo, no, like the easiest way to get laid is like just start being a chick. It's like stupid. It's like they are super gay. Chicks are like way gay. The weirdest thing. Anyway, a lot of it's funny. Next year should be better for me because I am going to likely start a new kind of career. Going to continue with transition. I'll be getting surgeries and things by hopefully the tail end of the next year. I'll be out on my own with a new place. It should be like a pretty good year, I hope. You can tell me to shut up if you want to talk.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I was snickering at Raven's little applause there. That was funny. No, I think it's great to get all out there, especially since welcome to the show again. Like I say, basically, Sister Danger, you weren't crying through that, were you? I saw you wiping your eyes.
Only tears of laughter. Sorry, that's got to be like the funniest thing I've heard all day. Like the easiest way to get laid is become a chick.
It's a paradox. I put it out there. I put a meme out there. It was like, yeah, like it's the greatest irony, right? It's like the increase of women chasing after your inoperative testicles is like goes up. It's like the most annoying shit ever. Yeah. Anyway.
I think just trans women in general are probably the most sexually sought after people on the planet. For real. I mean, like the number of trans women, and men that hit me up is insane.
I get like gazillion, like I look like a dude. I sound like a dude. I'm like effeminate and all that. All right, and that's fine. I know what I am between my ears, and I know what I'm working toward. But the thing is, I would like if I expected to get any of that kind of attention, I wouldn't have expected it to be so early. And I got friend requests out the fucking wazoo by weirdos. And I think the thing is like there's a lot of gay guys that are like, well, they're kind of like I was for a long time, right? They just like would not allow themselves to like be that, right? And I think they use trans women as like an outlet, even if they don't even look like women, because it's like a way that they can be gay without being gay, kind of a thing. Like that's
a lot of straight men that like trans women too, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. There's a lot of straight guys that like trans women. I don't think I'm at that stage yet, but I tell you what, the fucking gay dudes, they're about it.
See, now I guess it was earlier. It was definitely earlier in the year. I don't know, one summer, maybe it was spring, whatever. I had mentioned something about like, holy shit, like my friends list is going crazy, and you were like saying, "Oh yeah, whatever, good for you." Oh, look at you.
I know, like, oh, this is a problem. Oh my god, shut up.
And now you see, it's weird.
It's weird.
Crazy.
I mean, it's not like a problem or anything. I'm whining about it, and that's about as far as I need to vent.
It's a distant memory for me now, but I know how inconvenient it could be when everybody wants you. So.
I bet. I bet.
I jest, of course. But
so I have something else funny that I would like to bring to the group. It involves Sister Danger. So every year, Sister Danger has been running this sock exchange over in Fairyland, right? And I decided to get involved with these things because it's good to meet other cultures and whatnot. But you're supposed to sign up with like your persona's name when you do the sock exchange, right? And I didn't have anything in my head at the time as like a persona for that kind of stuff. So I remembered when my family used to write the word stud muffin on letters to me while I was in the army. It was a joke, right? But like I'll just put stud muffin. I used to use that as a nickname. Fine. So somewhere in the database for Sister Danger's sock exchange, stud muffin got changed into Stud the Muffin Elf. And I did not get a sock in the mail. What I got, it's in that package right there. What I got was this, it's elf attire. And It looks like I'm supposed to cook in it.
Is it like a mankini?
It's like
An elkini?
a cooking apron and a hat, but I don't think you're supposed to wear other clothes with it.
You opened your sock exchange before the 21st? Is that what I hear you saying right now?
I
Stud the
did.
muffin?
I did, and
Yes,
I'm glad I did, because if I opened this thing on camera, I would have been super embarrassed, because it's like, holy shit.
Man, okay, so I'm very disappointed in you right now, and I would request, though, that Goth change your nickname so that it's appropriately reflecting, your
You
stud.
changed my nickname into Stud the Muffin Elf.
Hold on. I didn't buy your gift. I was not your partner. That is not from me.
There's jingle bells on this sex get up.
It is not from
Jingle
me.
bells on it.
It is not from me.
These jingle bells dangle around my jingle bells.
Although I'm about to go look and see who your partner was, because I'm dying over here. I also feel like
Hold on, I'll try. It was Riz O A.
Oh, yeah.
Here I am.
Okay.
There it
And
is.
so I got this thing. You know how, like, when you're in the hospital and you wear the hospital shirt and your ass is hanging out?
Right.
I think you're supposed to have your ass hanging out in this. Like, you're just supposed to.
I want to see these pictures. Like, I want to see Stud the Muffin Elf's only phase, as we call it, over on my channel. Yeah, we want to see your OnlyFay channel.
That's pretty.
Only Faye, like OnlyFans.
Yeah.
So y'all probably don't know this, but well, I mean, Raven might know this because Raven and me have followed each other on Twitter since forever. But my Twitter name used to be Stud Muffin Beefcake, which was my porn name in some MySpace test from way back in the day. You'd have to do like internet archaeology to find that shit now, but
I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah, I missed MySpace. Just I think I did make a MySpace page at one point, like probably near the tail end of it.
Do you know what I miss most about MySpace? The fact that it was able to exist. It can't exist now. You couldn't make that all over again, because you could steal art from anywhere on the internet and put it on your MySpace. You could like you had a blog, you had music playing that you didn't need licensing for on your MySpace. You could just grab it from YouTube or grab it from any other place that streamed music back in those days. And like and hell, fucking MySpace had its own library of music for that matter.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean your page could be like very welcoming and kid friendly, or it could be fucking straight up pornographic. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you could completely have freedom over your space. It was MySpace.
You can make it
reminds me of the earlier days of YouTube, like when I first got on, and you could totally customize your page and you had some personality to it. And I remember when they first started making it uniform, and it was just like, oh, this isn't going to be good. They just kept taking away features and taking away features and taking away features. So now every, other than having a banner, they're all boring and bland. There's no reason to go. You would actually go to somebody's YouTube page to check out all the shit, and there's no reason to do that anymore.
Right. And like, you could still do what you could do on MySpace if you wanted to go to the trouble of making your own website and hosting it somewhere. But that was the whole point of MySpace, was you build your own little website, and it wasn't a social media platform in the same sense that other more recent social media platforms are. It was really just MySpace, you know what I mean? And I don't know what happened to y'all's experience, but for me, it got ruined because what they did was they relaxed the rules on spamming, which meant that every single day I have like not less than a dozen cam girls wanting me to look at their fucking stripping, and about a dozen or more bands saying, hey, check out my new song. And it was just like you couldn't find messages from real people anymore because it was just an avalanche of bullshit. So
that and like I think there was this weird part where like people like on the older side had this rapid migration to Facebook. And then that left younger people. And I think the other thing too is then Twitter came out, because Twitter was even less work than setting up a MySpace page, right?
Right.
And I guess Twitter had been around, but it's finally caught. It took a while for Twitter to actually get some traction, and then once it did,
because when Twitter first came out, blogging was still pretty popular, and the whole idea of a microblog just seemed, I was a blogger at the time, and a microblog just seemed way too limiting to me. How am I 140 characters, please?
Yeah.
And 140 characters, when it first started, you couldn't basically post a link to a website, because some website links are 140 characters long. You know what I mean? So, but then they made it so you could truncate websites and you could put pictures on it, and it got better and better for a long time. And then, I mean, I don't really necessarily want to talk about this right in a second, but what's happened to Twitter in the past month and a half is absolutely shocking, and it's only getting worse.
Yep.
I don't use it. I've never used it. I mean, I have an account on it, but like I follow nobody, and I have it just to like see what people write because there's links like everywhere on the internet for Twitter shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've got one, but like I don't use it.
Yeah, I deleted my original account because again I didn't really use it that much, and then I made another one, and I mostly used it for like when there would be political debates, and I'd be tweeting at the various figures in the debates or whoever had commented to them, and but I just it always seemed too stream of consciousness to me. Even at 280 characters, like I have more shit to say than that. Yeah.
Never.
I mean, it's good for what it is. It's fine. I think I prefer the Facebook format to Twitter. It's so flexible. Like it just works for whatever you want. You can throw videos up there. You can, it works.
Well, what's interesting to me is that Facebook was starting to become less and less popular because more and more people were doing Twitter and saying fuck Facebook because we don't like Zuckerberg. Now it's like,
Right.
Zuckerberg's not so bad. People are coming back to Facebook because Twitter is such a fucking.
I mean, how bad does Musk have to be to make Zuckerberg look better by comparison, right? I mean, I really preferred my life like 3 months ago when I didn't have to care about Elon Musk. I much preferred it when I could safely ignore him because I was never going to need one of his cars or give that much of a shit about all the things that he tries to do. Like everyone says, yeah, but he's going to go to Mars. Well, that is yet to be seen. The man says a lot of shit he doesn't fucking accomplish, so why everybody thinks he's going to Mars fucking cracks my ass up. That's some seriously good PR.
Well,
I used to give him a lot more credit.
If he goes to Mars, he's not doing that shit for us. He's doing it for himself. He's not helping us at all.
Right.
And basically most of what he has, because people are like, he did that. Most of what he has, he bought. He bought PayPal. He bought Tesla. He didn't make Tesla.
I know that for sure. I mean, I used to like Teslas back in the day because they're really, really interesting sports cars. But I don't even know what happened to that side of Tesla if it even still exists, But this whole thing about going to Mars, does anybody know about the actual laws regarding, let's just say that a private enterprise landed on Mars before anybody else and staked their claim to it? Would that be legal?
No,
No country and no individual can claim any kind of sovereignty on Mars. I think maybe, if anything, they might be able to apply to the UN for some kind of mining license.
Because I remember back in the 80s, they used to sell property on the moon, but I don't even know if that's legal.
No, that wasn't legal either.
Now, that's like the Scotland
if
title
somebody
thing.
lands on Mars and then they just like establish a military there or some kind of defensive thing, and then they're just like, nah, you guys, I claim it. And then, the world is like, no, you can't do that. And they're like, well, come and take it from me. You put a flag there first. It is theirs. That is how that rule works. Everybody knows that rule.
So I think the most likely thing that could possibly perhaps happen one day if we were able to establish a sustainable colony there is eventually, when there's enough people living and working there and it's self-sustaining, that they would probably claim sovereignty and tell the earth to fuck off.
The minute it was
probably that's our nature.
Joe, is anything in here related to naked baking?
Naked bacon. Naked baking?
Yeah.
No, nothing to do with bacon.
Nothing embarrassing that I can.
No.
I
No,
can
no,
show you.
no, no,
That's
no.
unfortunate. And
Are
you
we
stole
witnessing
the
an
story
unboxing?
of Yule Cat shorts, by the way.
It looks like we are, yeah.
Joe sent me a box.
How come
Oh,
you're
is
opening
there anything in
it?
it?
Oh, I'm
Wow.
so mad. You were supposed to wait.
Is
You
there
did
anything in
not
it?
wait.
Joe said this box was coming on the 10th.
Is it empty?
You were supposed to wait until December 21st for solstice. And you open your socks unboxed, and you didn't even get a pair of socks. Yule Cat is gonna eat you. That's how it works.
Thank you, Joe.
That's
I have
important.
one exactly like that.
Joe's just waiting for that dildo to spring out of that box.
He's just gonna like put it on the thing and like open it up and boing right out of the top. I would.
I can make teas now and coffees the right way.
I know some good handmade tea blenders, like people that blend tea, not blending
teas
devices.
made out of hand.
Thank you, Joe. This is because Joe cares about me. We're going to go high quality coffee from now on.
Man, high quality coffee sounds amazing, but in truth, I'll just drink. I'll drink like 3-day-old coffee. I don't care. Like if there's no mold floating on the top of it in the pot, I'm like reheat that shit. Like tip of coffee.
Oh, interesting. This one is just as a plain box. Strange.
Is that a coffee cup in there?
No.
Oh,
Oh, it's a little one-man French press.
I was going to say it's a French press. Oh,
That's fancy.
ooh la la.
Well, Mike said to me the other day that he had this like Keurig with the unsustainable and very expensive K cups. So I said, well, here you go.
That is the one fucking thing I can't peel back from. I don't think I could ever peel back from it. I know it's awful, but goddamn, I really like those little K cup make coffee in a second in the afternoon. Yeah, I know. It's just
I mean, I do actually like. I will not bust the money myself to go get one of those. However, I have a friend who has one, and every time I stay in a hotel, that's what's in all the hotels these days. So handy, just like
it is. It's just too damn convenient.
and like it's not a mess. You just pop that little thing out and throw it away. Like it's good. It's good stuff. I can understand. I'm just really cheap.
Well, they're expensive. I mean, it's a lot of money, and the K cups are expensive too. And then I also sent Mike some spices.
He did. I did a whole thank you for that for Joe. That was more personal, but yeah, I have spices in my place now. When you leave and you start anew and you realize everything that you had, all the little things are gone. When you reach for something, like, thank goodness I tell a lot of my clients that the first thing you need to move into your place is toilet paper. At least I have toilet paper, and I wasn't surprised to not have toilet paper. But everything else, I reach for it and it's not there.
Well, that's the thing. You're literally completely starting over, so it's not like you had like any of that, the basics.
Did you buy a vacuum?
No. Well, see,
things.
You don't buy anything for yourself yet, but yeah, I just swept my floor with a broom, with the old-fashioned way.
He needs all of the things that a house requires. I've been there. I've seen it. He doesn't have the things. And I don't, you know what I mean by that? Like, just all of the things. Like,
sure, all the things.
Like, where the fuck is your drawer full of batteries? Like, that's a thing that people have.
Did you say drawer full of batteries?
Yeah, like a drawer full of batteries. Like, I have that, right? Like, I'm gonna forget it when I move out, but I need that. But
well, my drawer of doom needs batteries in it for sure, but I have a drawer of doom here, and my drawer of doom at work has some batteries in it.
Draw of Doom.
Drawer.
That's an actual like clinical term for people with ADHD.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
High correlation between ADHD and owning a drawer of doom.
And boxes or bags, right? Like, isn't that another one of the things?
I have 2 of those drawers. 2 of them.
Doom boxes, doom drawers.
So is that like like a lot of people call it junk drawer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess like ADHD people have like have far more of it. Like,
because it's hard though. There's those things that you can't categorize. They don't really go with anything else. But you don't need them. You don't need them often, but you need them occasionally. So if you don't have it, then you got to be running around looking for it when you need it.
And all that junk goes in one place.
Right, like the garage door clickers that you don't have because like your car probably has a button built in, like like that kind of shit. You just like it has to be a place, but you don't know what the place should be. So it ends up there, which is like where all of that shit is. And I hope to God that I can find some of the shit I've been looking for in there, but I can't.
Yeah, I once a year I go through. We have more than one space that's a junk drawer, and I go through each of them and I try to throw out as much as I can. But it's like, well, like a ruler. Okay, I rarely need a ruler or because a straw, or usually more of a straight edge than actually measure anything. But occasionally I need a straight edge. I need to,
Yeah.
Yeah. Once upon a time, when I first started on YouTube. Back in sort of 09, 2010, back then. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the podcast or not, but I mean, I was a hoarder pretty bad. I had a combination of collections and things that should have really been thrown away, but might have come in useful someday. There's a whole category of things that might be useful someday. I have 4 broken umbrellas because the umbrella that I had that worked might also break. But it might break worse than one of my broken umbrellas, and I could use one of them to go to the store and get a new umbrella. I mean, that's hoarder mentality, right? There's a whole mentality that goes into that. And there's the other side of collections, right? I used to have this mentality that I valued things that nobody else seemed to understand cool, right? Which is absolutely narcissistic as fuck, right? So, like, for example, I started a button collection. Because I started to notice how interesting buttons were. Do you realize how many different kinds of fucking buttons there are?
Oh, yeah.
Thousands and thousands you could collect. I mean, I had 3 jars full of buttons. No 2 were alike, right? Absolutely. It took me years to collect. When I did myself my hoard, the button collection was easy to get rid of, right? That's an easy thing to get rid of. But some things are harder to get rid of because you invest this sense of you've saved something, which is total bullshit. You've sold yourself this narrative, right, as a hoarder, and this is this whole self-reinforcing thing. Like, I had more than 100 videotapes, store-bought videotapes that I rescued from charity shops, way after you couldn't find a VCR to save your life, But I thought, these will be cultural icons someday. I want to save them in case someday they might be worth money. And even though it is true that some of those videotapes did become worth money, like I had the original Star Wars, not the new ones that have been digitally fucked with and added onto, but the original cinema versions of it on VHS, totally unopened. And those go for good money now. But I couldn't keep anything. I had to give myself 5% of everything I owned, and that was really hard.
Michael, do you have packets of soy sauce and McDonald's Szechuan sauce in there?
No, because this place is new. I haven't eaten Chinese yet. But as far as packets go, I have a red condom, a rainbow-colored condom, and a regular green Durex ribbed for her pleasure.
What's
I
the
didn't
date
know you
on
were a
it?
smuggler, Michael.
What?
I didn't know you were a smuggler.
I got Sharpies. How many Sharpies do I need?
So I was always curious if ribbed condoms actually did anything for women, on the
See,
receiving end.
here's the thing. I'm
And he says no.
I'm actually very selfish, and so I figure out which way they go, and I turn it inside for me. It's good for my pleasure.
Yeah, but that only works if the condom's way bigger than you, so you slide, you slide in and out.
Magnums.
There you go.
So I got Sharpies, 1 red and 3 black.
Yeah,
I've got-
actually, like I've never ever met a guy that wasn't like a Magnum extra, extra, extra large. That's all of them. Just ask them.
So they start off like they have a weird sizing thing for condoms, right? Like they start off at large, then they go extra large, extra large.
Because and
you know
people
that?
make fun of that hashtag like ego so fragile.
Right. Like you
Yeah,
can't go
scissors.
somewhere and buy medium condoms.
Right.
Scissors
Like you
are
can't find
important
size
as well.
small. They don't exist. Yeah.
These are actually signature stamps in case I need to sign stuff like really quickly.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam.
Uh-huh.
That's normal, right, Joe?
Well, I have some for my business, for when checks come in. But it actually has like the company account numbers, like for deposit only, and you go plan.
Yeah.
More pens. I have a pen cup over there though. But
I've got a pen cup, but what I do is, again, that's one of those things. Once a year, I go through the pen cup and I try to write with each of the pens. Anything that doesn't write gets tossed out because, sometimes they dry out and everything. You just got to dispose.
I don't have a dry erase marker, dry erase marker board, but I have a dry erase marker. I don't know why.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One thing that's messed up for a while there, I was so aggressive about throwing out pens that we actually ran out of pens in the house. I'm like the first time in my entire life that I actually ran out of pens.
I have a roll of thank you stickers in case I want to start selling Chinese food. I have Tylenol extra for when I have PMS. I have a thumb drive that I don't know what's on it.
Ooh.
I have that exact same looking model, at least the same shape and everything. I think I have the same model.
Straws for a breathalyzer I don't own, but I used to keep extra straws in my pocket when I worked in the detox. Like an ancient set of earbuds that have wires that aren't Bluetooth that the new generation doesn't know how to use. And these things have never been opened. This is a collector's item, actually. So, a ukulele tuner.
What? Oh yeah, that's right.
You put it on the ukulele. You clip it on, and then it reads the note that you're playing.
I know what a ukulele
Michael, do you
tuner
play
is. I was just like, why would you have one of those? But then I seem to recall you have a ukulele, and that would be why.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, you're not really a true hoarder, unless you actually buy a lot of shit that you don't need. Like, it's one thing if you have you save a lot of shit you don't need. It's when people are sitting there and just keep buying shit.
Sure. I did that, but it was always what other people might call junk.
This is my old merchant guard license that meant that I could be a security guard in the city and county of Denver.
Whoa.
I had to pass a FBI background check to get this thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's like my Twig
Well,
card.
while you're in the city and county of Denver, you have to have that license. But any of the surrounding metro areas, you don't have to have that license. But if you want to work in Denver, you have to have a background check done. Get a merchant guard license.
See, what's weird, I have a TWIC, which is its Transportation Workers Identification Card, because I work in some places that are under what's called Marine Security, MARSEC.
I used to have that working in refineries.
Yeah, I figured you would. So the thing is weird though. This is Department of Homeland Security, thing, right? Is it useful at the airport? No. it doesn't get me. It doesn't isn't even though it's actually more stringent than TSA pre-check, you still have to get a TSA pre-check. It's like, dude, I can go work in a nuclear power plant with this thing, but you won't let me, but you still, you're putting a microscope up my ass at the airport. What the fuck?
This is extra tread for a laser, like just a CNC controlled laser. That's just a extra tread for it. And this right here, I think I know what this is. This is when like when one end of the string inside of your sweatpants comes out farther, and like you lose the other end. And how do you chase it? I don't know. So I just pulled it all the way out, and it was like, I'll fix it later. So here's that thing.
I've had to rescue a few.
What do you do with that? Like, what's the answer for that?
Oh, to get it back out. I mean, you literally have to you have the pants, and you actually have to kind of grab it and kind of push, grab it again, and pull the other side. It's very tedious. It takes a long time.
So I was gonna glue a rare earth magnet to one end, and then just pull it along with a magnet and just snake it through. And then I thought, well, maybe I could just do the coat hanger abortion method of just
Oh,
with a wire coat hanger, I could maybe get it through.
That would work. Or could work. Should work.
I'm still in the planning phase years later.
Right.
Right. That's pretty funny. Hey, so if I may, I'm gonna the conversation off to some recent events that I would be interested in probing the group's thoughts on. For example, recently there had been a number of attacks on power substations where people are shooting up electrical equipment. And it seems to be, at least in two of the ones that I'm aware of, the one recently in North Carolina and one here in California not that long ago. I can't remember when, but it wasn't that long ago. And the people who did the shooting seemed to know what they were shooting at because they shot it where it needed to be shot to fuck it up. I mean, you can't just shoot at a place and expect to actually cause any damage. The bullet is very small, you know what I mean? And it could easily just embed itself in a wall or something like that. If you know what you're shooting at is on the other side of the door, you can aim your, and so it seems to be that there's some sort of planning and inside knowledge that's been going into at least some of these attacks. This is clearly domestic terrorism as far as I can say, but you know me, I'm overreactionary, right? What do you think? Do you call it as terrorism, or is it just...
No, I think you are not wrong in this case. I think you're not being reactionary or paranoid or any more normal. But I think this is... I think it's clear. I mean, when people... you think about it, I don't think it's a bunch of yahoos just we're out drunk, around. This is purposeful.
One of them happened outside of what was to be a trans parade. And it was the case that somebody went on Facebook and said, I know what happened, and she was visited by the sheriffs. And when the sheriff showed up at her house, then all of a sudden she changed her tune and said, oh, it was just God's wrath. Please pray with me. And so the sheriff was led into this long, hour-long prayer with this lady, holding hands with the sheriff.
Oh, God.
Couldn't do anything because she actually just said, well, what she knew was that it was God's wrath. But she might have known more. She should still be.
There's been a number of these.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when the first one was where somebody shut up a substation. It was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
But every single one of them has been done by white supremacist groups. Every one of them. It's one thing they have in common. The common thread is they're all white supremacist groups. Most of them have been targeting LGBT people.
Well, I don't know. I can't speak to that point, Raven. We can discuss that in a minute. But I'm curious to understand that. I mean, as far as I'm aware, I'm a lay person, but it seems to me that, like, electricity generation is infrastructure. That's a military target, is it not? I mean, is that not military thinking? Right? You take out the power because you want to do some shit in an area. You take the power
They've
out.
openly
do,
talked
you-
about, like, these white supremacy groups have openly talked about what they want to do, and one of the things is a coordinated attack on the infrastructure by shooting up substations and having the power go out for an extended period of time, and the government losing control, and then they would kind of swoop in and take control.
Yeah.
That's actually a plan that they've actually documented they want to do.
Yeah, and on top of that, as far as it's being military, I mean, look what Russia's doing in Ukraine right now, right? I mean, they're literally destroying the civilian electrical infrastructure.
This is what I'm talking about, because a lot of these people seem to have sympathy with Russia, Joe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I don't think I did. I've often disagreed with you on things where I thought you were being a little paranoid. I am completely with you on this. I mean, because there's really, and that's really why would you want to take the power down? That's because this way it causes civil disruption. It's hard to coordinate because radios go down, communications goes down, and then you can do stuff and no one's gonna all the cameras go out, so all the security cameras go out. Some of them may be backed up on power, but not for long. And UPSs only last so long, and so it makes you wonder what happened during that time that no one's yet aware of.
Well, their hope is that on a wide enough scale, they were to do it simultaneously, that government itself would unravel. That the population would be too unruly to handle if you don't have an operating infrastructure.
Well, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast before, not in terms of terrorism, but I mean about what would happen if electricity went out completely. For how long would it take for society to unravel? 2 days, 2 weeks? You know what I mean? I mean,
well, see, we have examples like during Sandy when most of New Jersey was without power for several days, and in some places for weeks. That's the thing. It doesn't really create the chaos that it creates chaos, but in different ways. And what I found amazing, my observation, and I actually made a video about this after Sandy when we got the power back, was you think about all the conspiracy people who talk about, oh well, they've come all the crazy things that the government would do to try to control us. And I said, when the power went out, people like in my neighborhood, everyone's kind of wandering around in a daze. No one knew what to do. Because the phones are out and the TV's out and everything's out. There's and it was cold, so unless you had gas heat, your heat was out. And what I said, I made a video making the point that if the powers that be, if the moneyed interests really wanted to control us, they could literally just turn off the power and water and bring everybody to their knees. And since that doesn't happen, that leads me to think that conspiracy is bullshit because they haven't done it yet. So why if they really were going to do it, they could have done it very easily. They don't need like I remember the one about they're going to change all the money and all our money will be worthless and all this kind of crazy shit. But I don't think it would create the same. It's not going to create the unruliness. It's kind of ironic because right wing anarchists think that we don't need government, right? They and everything will be fine and people can manage themselves, but yet they're the same ones out there. We can cause chaos by making everything break down. Like, well, which is it, guys? It can't be both.
Wouldn't ever be worried about it off the face of it. I'm not terribly concerned about the level. I mean, the level that they would have to do to pose any real national level risk. To the level of coordination that these aren't the best, most sophisticated entities. You know what I mean? Like,
I'd like to push back on that a little bit, Autumn, because you don't have to necessarily have something simultaneously happen nationally for there to be a national response to it, because things like riots, for example, have a potential to exceed their locale. Like, remember in '92, the Rodney King riots, as they were called. There were riots all over the country about that, and back in the 60s, in 1967, there was I think over 100 riots in the country, because riots would happen in one area and then other people would do the same thing because there's reasons, but yeah, there's a
Sure.
lot of reasons.
I wouldn't suggest there wouldn't be problems or they couldn't do damage. I just don't know that it would be like a fallout situation.
I mean, well, if they
or
really want
anything
to
like
F
that.
things up, they should just prepare and then wait for the next natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina to hit and then go on the back of that. Let that do like half the work for you, and then you're going to have everybody deployed over there.
Well, the other thing too is
Chaos
that
ensues.
whenever there has been those things like you're talking about, Paul, for the most part, there have been some sort of triggering public event, right? So Rodney King trial,
Right.
Whereas with this, I think because it seems to me that if someone was actually going to coordinate something nationwide, there would be chatter. It could be, if you think about it, like January 6th, there was plenty of information that wasn't acted upon because of course the government was members of the government were actually in on it, but there's all the evidence was there. So I think if it was an anti-government people, I think we'd probably pick them up. It's the same way like when there was that plot to capture Governor Whitmer in Michigan. Basically there was enough chatter there being watched that before they could execute, they all got arrested.
I like Deep Ashtray's question in the comments.
Here's a question. I'll put it on the screen.
I hope never.
I actually formulated watching Andor. When is it time for an uprising? I haven't watched Andor, so I have no idea about the reference, and I don't really want to talk about it because I do intend to watch it.
I don't really know about Andor either. I haven't seen it.
Right.
But the question of when is it time for an uprising is a pretty good question.
Well, I mean, I have, as we talked about this before on the show, I know, but I mean, I have big, strong feelings about that because on the one hand, the time is over. That was so long past yesterday, right? We're way overdue for an uprising on the one hand, but on the other hand, like I always say, what are you prepared to endure? What are you prepared to inflict? And who are you prepared to sacrifice? Because those questions will need to be asked with the revolution.
Well, let's start at Congress and work our way down.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. I've made this point in many different forums, or fora, I guess would be the right word, that if you look at almost every revolution, with the exception of the United States, and even to a degree ours, but the revolution pretty much never went the way the revolutionaries thought it was going to go. The Reds didn't start the Russian Revolution, but they capitalized on it, and they weren't even the most popular group, but they ended up seizing power. The French Revolution, most of the original revolutionaries were all executed during the Reign of Terror. It took 84 years to get a stable republic after the French Revolution. China and Russia are still fucked up. So I mean, this idea, it's a very romantic idea that we'll just tear down the current power structure and it'll all be better. Right. And I don't think so because, like you said, what happens in like South America, Central and South America, when there was all these constant revolutions, the people that would come in, I'm sure they all had, high ideals, high-minded ideals, and they all ended up becoming the same people they replaced. They all ended up being just as power hungry, just as greedy, and just as destructive as the previous people. I think this idea that
their hands in everything going on south of in South America since forever, right?
Yeah.
So we've meddled so much in everything that's gone on down there, Central and South America, for my whole lifetime. I don't really necessarily. I don't even know if the people who live there have ever had a genuine thing happen to them. You know what I mean? I mean, isn't there? Which country is it? Colombia that just recently had their first the left-wing guy they actually allowed get elected without having to try to overthrow him. Was it Colombia? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with you in the basic principle, Joe, that whenever there's a revolution, the strong are going to be the winners. And who are the strong? It depends on, are the strong going to be the same people who have honor? Are the strong going to be the same people who want to set up a fair system? Right. Those are perfectly rational questions, because strong people tend to want to maintain and supplement their own power.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the threat or the idea of a revolution is perhaps actually more powerful than a real revolution for some of the reasons that you guys are saying. And it occurs to me that maybe really what would be more effective is the unceremonious removal of some individuals in order to perpetuate the idea that this will continue in the way that they began to cart off nobles, off to the guillotine, right? And once a few heads start to roll, right? If everybody thinks that their head is on the chopping block, then stuff starts to change, right? Because they're like, oh God, we're going to be next. If we do not do something right now, it has reached that point, right? That way, you're not actually doing what is being suggested, which is causing a complete failure of infrastructure, which is in fact quite terrible, right? But at the same time, name a time in history where anything has radically changed in a country or government or system that did not involve a violent revolution, ever.
Well, I guess the question I would have is that, so I hear what you're saying as far as, okay, if we have like a mini revolution, but don't tear down the whole thing. I don't know that we have any examples of that actually working. So I'm not saying that it can't. I'm just saying I don't know that we have evidence that it has.
Well, has it ever happened anywhere that you can?
Well, no, well, see, the thing is,
I can't. So don't.
Well, the thing is, usually when it happens, though, once it gets started, it doesn't stop at like in the French Revolution, right? We're just going to kill the aristocracy and we're going to make it all better. But it didn't stop there because the problem
is forgot to eat them.
What's that?
They forgot to eat them.
Well, the thing is then, because what ends up happening is when you create any kind of power vacuum, there's always those people trying to fill it, right? And then so what ends up happening is, so now you have competing interests. It's exactly what happened in Russia. There was the Reds, the Whites, and there was another group, and I forget who they were. But they end up fighting each other because, well, your way is wrong. Your way of socialism is wrong, and our way is the better socialism, or whatever the ideology is, right-wing ideology, whatever it is. The other thing too is what happened in the French Revolution is you had a thing of the purity test. Oh, well, you're not revolutionary enough. So we're gonna it's no one's ever pure enough. Paul, I know you'll be familiar with this since you're a Babylon 5 fan. Remember the episode Infection?
Sure.
And the premise there was basically it was based on revolutions in this happened in the world. Was that the idea that this species created a warrior, like kind of a not a robot, but basically like a
killing machine, like an organic killing machine.
Yeah, genetically modified killing machine that and it was to kill the impure, and of course no one was ever pure enough, so eventually wiped out the entire population of the planet. So yeah, the thing that irritates me the most about the whole talk of revolution is that yes, we have moneyed interests that do everything they can to try to keep things from changing, and they get in the way, and they use their money to influence people in negative ways that get people to vote against their own interests, all that, and it's all true. But the fact is that most people are discontented, but we struggle to get. I don't think we've got 75% participation in elections in my entire lifetime, and again, we look at the two major parties, and you can, there's plenty of reason to say, oh, these guys suck. Great. But what's the participation in primaries? 15% or less. So we bitch about it, but we never fucking do anything about it when we have a system that if enough people get out there and do what they have in their head, things would change. One way, I mean, there's only so much money interest can do a lot, but they can't do everything. They, and that's why. And the people that are cynical about elections, I'm like, well, then why are billionaires spending billions of dollars every election cycle to prevent you from voting, to try to make it harder to vote, take away your right to vote, block you like you did, you committed one felony, now you can never vote again in your life. They wouldn't do that if the voting didn't matter. They wouldn't waste their money on that if it didn't matter. But so we kind of it's been said by other people, and I don't remember who, but we get the government we deserve, right? Because we don't, as a people, not individuals, but as a people collectively, because we fall for the bullshit, propaganda. We don't participate. And even then, once you get people elected, how many people write or call their representative? How many people you can actually schedule your representatives have visiting hours? Does anybody schedule a fucking meeting to go talk to your people, or do you go to a town hall meeting? And most of the time, you ask people, crickets, nothing. Well, yeah, of course. If you don't engage your government, the government doesn't give a fuck about what you think because you're not engaged. You don't vote. You're not a reliable voter. You don't get in their face. You don't tell them what you think. They don't care about rallies. They don't care about marches. They care about people that show up on election day.
I'm going to say that all the things that Joe said about trying to suppress the vote, they work. And I'm not putting all of the blame on the individuals. I'm putting it squarely on all of these things that have been done to suppress the vote. They're working, and some of them are psyops that just make you feel like voting doesn't matter.
Sure.
And if that's what your social media is feeding you, that there's no difference between the two parties, that they're two wings of the same bird of corruption, then you're probably the one that they don't want to vote.
Right.
I mean, if voting doesn't matter, then do it anyway.
Right.
Like, just get out there and do it.
I think there's an aspect of voter suppression which is not necessarily intentional, but maybe it is. But I mean, like, the fact is, and we've discussed this on the program before about how we don't necessarily demand, and I'm not sure if it's the media that stopped demanding it, or if people stopped demanding it, or if politicians have just stopped offering it. But I mean, we don't demand a high standard of ethics and moral character anymore from our politicians. We do not demand they are consistent. Back in the day, 100 plus years ago, Teddy Roosevelt didn't run for re-election because previously he had said he would not do so. And then he got to be really popular and could have won re-election because back in those days, you could elect a president as many times as you wanted. And he said he wouldn't run, so he didn't because he said he wouldn't. And how can you possibly run if you say you're not going to? I mean, oh my God, it's such a
contrast. What's her name? Susan Collins, who when she ran said that she was going to serve one term. She's been there like 20 something years now.
Right.
I did not know that.
Well, just like the whole Contract with America people, right? They're the ones that said, that we should have term limits, and then and if I get elected, I even if the law doesn't change, I'm not going to run past this, and now that I'm here, I kind of see that blah 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 blah. But you're right, and a lot of this happened in our lifetimes.
Damn right. Well, I mean, I'm sure Congress has always had a level of corruption. I mean, I'll go there, but nowadays they practically brag about it. They compete for who can corrupt the worst. You know what I mean? I mean, it honestly seems like they are competing with each other. Like they toast each other after work. Hey, I got another 350 grand today or whatever. And the fact that you can even give a politician that kind of money, to me, is corrupt in itself. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't always like this, that you could just blatantly give them this much money. And also there's the whole revolving door thing. Like they might not give you money now, but the minute you lose re-election or decide not to seek re-election, you've got a consultancy with high six-figure salary that you barely have to show up for work for.
Well, the thing is, there was a time when there was no limits on campaign contributions. Then because of corruption, they were instituted. But then super PACs. This idea that, well, it's not direct contribution, so therefore, it's just based on issues. So, and that's really how they get. That's one way they get around it is they say, well, yeah, I won't give to you you can only just I think it's like $2,500 now. I'll give you the $2,500, but in better I can go, or better yet, I can make my own PAC for you. And I can't mention you by name, but I'm going to basically promote the things you promote, and I'm going to attack the things your opponent promotes. And here's the thing that pissed me off the most about Citizens United, this idea that money is speech, which is such a ridiculous idea.
It is ridiculous.
The most ridiculous part about it is that means that the less money you have, the less speech you have. That's not an equal system. I mean, the idea that speech is free and equal for all of us, we all have equal access to speech. So if they say, well, you don't have enough money for speech, there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Yeah, money has access to speech.
Well, I mean, the idea that any kind of institutional entity, be it a corporation or a super PAC or anything like that, has inalienable God-given rights, which I don't believe in God, as you know. But I mean, to use the phrase, you think God gives a super PAC rights? That's bizarre. That's absurd on its face, right? Or institutions, like whether it's a trade union or whether it's a church or whether anything, institutions shouldn't have rights. People should have rights, and it just seems self-evident to me that regulations should exist on the principle that whatever the regulation is should consider the public interest as its higher priority, above profit, above a lot of other stuff that we might be able to list off. But the public interest should never be anywhere below the top three. I think it should be the top one, really, personally, but it should definitely not be the last interest, which is why we have fucking factories pumping shit into rivers and shit like that, Well,
this is the reason why I didn't used to be in favor of public financing, but I've totally changed my mind on it over the years, because it's like, no, we had public financing so that you couldn't give any money to PACs, or you couldn't give any that literally was each candidate that gets enough signatures, they get the same pool of money as everybody else.
Different countries have different ideas about what violates the concept of free speech. And like, for example, I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but back when I used to live in the UK, in France, when they're having a presidential election year, the media, the polling companies are no longer allowed to run polls for 2 weeks before the election. And the media is not allowed to report any polling data that might be ran for the 2 weeks prior to an election. That's one example I can think of. In the UK, the political parties have what's called a party political broadcast that is broadcast on all the TV networks for free. It's part of their broadcasting license. They have to do it, right? And it's a party. It's not made as a. It can be whatever they want it to be, basically, but it's made by the party. It's not made for the specific candidate, and they, like I said, you have to show them on all the networks. It's for free, and the bigger parties get a bigger proportion of those free shots, and the little parties might only get like one shot in a week, while the bigger parties might get like 3 or 4 shots in a week. It's all proportional based on how much votes you had in the previous last election. But the point is,
mom gets 3 or 4 shots in a week.
The point is, everybody gets to have their commercial time on TV, and they don't have to pay for it. No one's donating for it. The only thing it costs is the party has to pay some consultancy or advertising company to make the damn video or whatever, but that's pretty much it. And so you think how much the media would bitch in this country if they had to give politicians free access to advertising. That would totally change the game. If advertising was seen, political advertising was proportional to your support, which I guess could be seen by funding or something like that. But whatever the case might be, the point is, if they had to give you access, it would change the game. It would change the game, because you'd have to be on Fox if you're Joe Biden, for example. They couldn't say no. Oh, by the way, I mean, like, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but what the hell is up with all this fuck Joe Biden stuff? It's not like he's a terrible, awful, awful, bad president who's had loads of scandals and corruption. He's a doddery old man who happens to be the president. I just don't understand where all the venom comes from. I saw a truck going down the street the other day with fuck Joe Biden flags sticking out of its fucking rear end. And
People
I'm like,
stupid.
Well, what's interesting is I saw both this column did a video yesterday, the day before, and it was talking about Republicans critiquing Biden, and it turned out Newt Gingrich actually saying like, "Hey, stop underestimating this guy. He's actually getting a lot done." Now, of course, you finished it with got to stop, we got to like stop underestimating so we can stop socialism. And of course, Bo's laughing at that because Biden's no socialist. We all know that. But yeah, I mean, I can understand if someone's saying, okay, he's not doing the things I want or not doing enough of the things I want. Fair enough, but to be like have hatred for the guy, have to be angry at him, like, really?
Yeah, I mean, he's not even in my lifetime. He's not even in the bottom 3 presidents. Not even.
I really want to know why he won't reschedule marijuana though.
That's a
Like
good question.
why? Because that's something that he could do, and he really should.
Maybe he's saving it for his pre-election announcement. Maybe he's going to be like, "Hey, I want to be reelected and legalize pot across the country," and that
I
will
mean,
make it to be popular with the kids.
he would garner so much favor from the kind of people that make complaints like what Joe's talking about. I think like that kind of shit would go a long way. Like, and then keep doing the student loan forgiveness stuff. Like those two things. I think would satisfy like a lot of those issues.
So he would have to give a directive to the FDA and tell them how to do their job in order to do that, which, he did give a pardon to, a couple thousand people who had cannabis on their felony record with just a simple possession. He did what he could in that was easy. But yeah, he could be more vocal about it for sure.
Well, here's what he did back when he did that. So he's directed the Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate the administrative process to review, especially how marijuana is scheduled. So basically, they actually started the process, but it's government, so nothing happens fast. It just
sure.
Yeah. So
I mean that's great. I just
along the same
it seems like
lines,
something he could just resign.
It's not though.
I know.
I think they've kind of lost the plot though, in that they just made it illegal for railway workers to strike, and the Democrats are supposed to be the party that's supporting of unions, and they just made a union toothless.
2 words: Harry Truman.
That might need some elaboration, Joe.
Okay,
yeah, I want
this happened. Well, it happened before. I mean, there was the same thing happened when Harry Truman was president. A Democrat. The thing is that basically the union itself did work out a deal with the rail companies, but the members rejected it. So basically, what he did was, okay, well, we're going to take that agreement and we're going to kind of make that happen. So, so it wasn't like the union got nothing. I mean, the union got what the union asked for, just that the members the body rejected it. But the problem, it really is a problem with any kind of infrastructure, right? If all the doctors and nurses went out tomorrow, it's going to be like mega destructive. So basically what he did was say, okay, don't go on strike. Here's a bunch of what you want. It wasn't everybody, but it was what the union asked for. You got that. And now they can continue to negotiate. Given how precarious the economy is right now, I'm not surprised. And it's not the first time, and it's not the first time a Democrat's done it.
But in fairness, right? This is something that I have strong feelings about. Because when the economy is precarious is exactly when you have the maximum bargaining power as a union.
Mm-hmm.
And they just pulled the rug right out from under them. You know what I mean? Maybe the union got what it wanted in quotation marks, but I mean, if a union's not representing its members' wishes, then it's not really doing what it's supposed to do.
Some of those union members that were on that committee might have been appointed, and some of them have drifted far away from knowing what their constituents want. I.e., they've been bought.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, right? I mean, I get annoyed because this comes from when I used to live in the UK, and I have endured a number of rail strikes in the UK, both on the national rail and on the London Underground. And the London Underground is the example I'm going to use. And there was at least 2 strikes during the time I lived in London by rail workers, drivers in London. And here's the thing: if Joe, I know you've been to London. London, the pulse of London is the underground. 2 million plus people every day ride the tube. London functions because the tube functions. These people have massive bargaining power. And frankly, when you look at the things they're asking for in one of the most expensive cities in the world, I'm like, well, yeah. And people want the government in particular, because it's Tories, want you to blame the union for striking. They have managed, since Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, they have managed to turn the conversation from blame the management for exploiting the workers. Now it's blame the workers for bitching about being exploited, which is what's happening, right? I mean, sick leave, paid sick leave is what these people wanted for the rail workers in America. That should be a basic standard of every fucking job, frankly. And the fact that they have to negotiate for it at all is, to me, insulting. Really, Joe, you're moving.
I totally agree with you. As somebody who has sick leave for my workers, I heartily agree. Because hell, if I can do it, they sure as hell can do it.
Right, and that's how I used to feel when I had my shop in the UK, Joe. I mean, I used to talk to Brock Lawley about this, because I used to have to give my staff 4 weeks of paid holiday a year. And Brock was like, well, that sounds like, awful. How can you afford it? Don't you think it's wrong to pay people for work they're not doing? That's the mentality. You're paying people for work they're not doing. You're not maintaining good relations with a valued employee. No, you're paying someone for work they're not doing. You're not giving someone a chance to have a life outside of work. You're paying. It's just the whole mentality is fucked up.
Right. I agree with you, Paul. But I'm going to point out one thing, though. This is not something that comes from you, but something I hear from leftists that is that they'll say like, whoa, well, the person got paid so much an hour, but the company charged just an hour. Well, that's where the money comes from to pay for the vacation and the time and all that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that they forget. They think like, well, if you charge $100, you should pay your worker $100. Well, no, but someone's going to pay for the rent, someone's got to pay for all the tools and all the things, and the times when work is slow and there's you're still collecting a check and there's not any revenue coming in, that money's got to come from somewhere.
Well, you're right, Joe, and I agree with you. There is a massive difference, though, between what the average worker makes and what the CEO makes, which is above and beyond like what it used to be years ago.
Oh, absolutely. And that's
the point where it's obscene.
This whole idea of like paying somebody for work that they're not doing, I don't quite understand this, right? Because when you are a business, other than to say this is a very capitalistic idea, but when you are a business, and you're going to hire somebody, right? You work into how much it's going to cost you per year to pay that person. Why would you not simply work in their time off?
Well, you do. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you should. That's how you do it, right? And that's the thing. So you basically have to price. You have to price things based on the fact that that person is going to get paid for the entire year, but they're going to be working some fraction of that year, and you got to account for that.
Right.
So what's happening in America, or what seems to have happened in America over the past few decades, is we have this absolute shark capitalist attitude that a worker is only valuable for the actual hours and labor that they put in, and I'm sure a lot of people would prefer it if they didn't have. And Joe, you could probably say this: would prefer it if you didn't have to offer your workers insurance and stuff like that, because that's yet another expense that comes from having labor working for you, right?
And this is that's the reason why I'm for national, for national system.
Make everything more profitable right off the bat. Sure. I mean, like this whole idea, Sister Danger, you nailed it. Basically, when I had my staff in my shop, you think this is how much money it's going to cost. And it's just literally just yet another cost of doing business, like every other cost of doing business, like paying taxes, like paying rent, like paying every other cost of business that you do. And I just get pissed off that people are so freaking have been sold this lie, because it didn't used to be this way. It did not used to be this way. I'm so fucking old, right, that I can remember expecting as my right a raise every year because it's a new year, goddammit, and I should be making more than last year.
Well, I mean, to your point, Paul, it's the same thing that happened with pensions, because basically vacation, sick time, all these things are deferred compensation. So basically, you got paid when you were actually at the job. You got paid less than you would have if you were getting paid piecemeal, so that there would be money. So the idea is so that instead of getting your money being like this, that you get you can expect, you can plan your expenses, and that actually also works for the company, right? They can plan your expenses,
Right,
and
right.
it's made to meet things out in a more even fashion. But then what they do, that's the thing. You said like they trick people and say, well, you're paying people not to do anything. Like, no. This is deferred compensation. If you don't have vacation and sick time and all these others, then theoretically you should be paying them more. And that's generally why contractors who don't qualify for vacation and sick time and all that generally do make more, because that's the whole idea, is that, well, that's you're getting your compensation up front and you're not getting it deferred. Pensions, the same thing. And you think about all the pensions that got canceled, they literally stole people's money.
Right. They're paying into it their whole freaking career.
Right. Because the whole idea of the pension was like, yeah, you're giving up some portion of your income so that if you stick with the company for a very long time, that the company was going to, so the company, you're taking care of the company while you're there, and the company's going to take care of you when you're done.
Right.
And so when they canceled pensions, they literally stole people's money. That's what it was. There's no other way to look at it.
It was ever legal to do that. I can't even believe it was legal to. That happened all throughout the 80s. Raiding pension funds became like a predatory thing that rich people were competing to find businesses that had fat pension funds and, you know, old employees, you know, and just literally buy them out and raid the fund. It's just obscene to me. And see, that's the to me, like, that's the darkest part of the capitalist system, right? We talked before. I mean, having a market-based economy in and of itself is not bad, but when you have a system that allows that kind of just unabashed theft, or same thing with some of these hedge funds, or what they'll do, like this is what happened to Hostess. Company comes in, buys the asset because it's a little distressed. They buy it probably a little bit less than it's worth, but the people who have it are eager to get out from under the debt. They borrow against the assets, stuff the money in their pockets, and then sell off the debt and write off the losses. And then the next company does the same thing, and then they say, oh well, you know, company has to go out of business because, you know, the business is so in debt. Well, the workers didn't cause that debt. The raiders did. They literally borrowed against the assets and then paid themselves bonuses. That's theft. You stole the assets of the business and left the debt. You know, you effectively borrowed the money on behalf of the company and gave it to yourself, and then walked away without paying the debt. How is that legal? You bring something to my mind, which is an interesting topic, I reckon, for the group to discuss. Okay, so like let's just say, Joe, that I don't know if that's still legal to do what you just described or not. I know it was definitely back in the 80s because it was happening right, left, and center.
That's how Bain Capital. That's how Mittens made his money.
This is what I'm about to bring up. All right. So let's just say, I mean, like, how worth what you just described? How worth it would it be to do that? And I'm going to use the example of Bernie Madoff. Right. Bernie Madoff lived like a fucking billionaire for 25 years before he finally got caught and is now, you know, spending the rest of his life in jail. He didn't go to jail, though, till he was past his 70th birthday. I don't know, he was 72 or 73 when he went to jail, something like that. So if you're already old anyway, and you've lived, is it worth 2-3 billion, whatever it was he was supposedly worth, which was all other people?
Of course, because then he goes to white person's jail. He doesn't go to actual jail. He goes to a jail that's probably nicer than all of us live in a place together. Like, I'd probably like to be in his jail. I'd have a tennis court, man, in my backyard. So,
I was watching, I forget who the comedian was, but they were talking about that. Like, they're talking about like there's that Locked Up Abroad show. He said there should be a Locked Up abroad where people from these third world countries where the jails are so horrible come here and get locked up, and then they're writing home and like how great it was. I'm living in a paradise and there's 3 meals a day, and you know, it's crazy. But I mean, that's unfortunately that basically what it comes down to is if you steal enough, it's worth it, because the consequences are so much lighter. And if you think about what happens, poor people who steal shit and what happens to them, the abuse from the police and the abuse from the correctional officers and just the general shitty treatment they get. But it's almost like the old expression, if you kill a man, you're a murderer. Kill many, you're a conqueror.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. You steal from somebody, you're a thief. You steal a lot, and you're a big winner. Even if you go to jail, you're a big winner.
Well, that certainly happened to Madoff, man. I mean, from my point of view, it paid off to be
Yeah.
Bernie Madoff. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people would make that trade if they knew they could have 25 years of that kind of lifestyle. It's not just living the lifestyle; it's having the connections that Bernie Madoff had as well.
Because the
In
thing
the
is
past-
that's not gonna just end. Like, he might go to jail, but like you said, like, he goes to jail in his 70s, right? And nevertheless, like, his whole family, everything that is his legacy, still exists around him. It's not, I mean, even if you took away the money, right? Like you're saying, his connections and the influence, any investments that got moved into safer places, all those are available to his family, to his kids, to his descendants, right? And they're going to benefit from all of that, right? So if your goal as a patriarch of a family is to be like, well, it's my job to take care of the family and look out for them, and then you do this, he has done that. And then at the end of his life, he gets to go to white person's prison, and his whole family still gets to be mega rich.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the most infuriating thing. I watched both of the Bernie Madoff movies, and while they did seize some assets, but basically the stuff that had been filtered out down to his family, at least the ones that were not convicted of something themselves, they basically kept it. And I'm like, why isn't his whole family destitute? Because almost all their money came from this scheme of his, almost all of it. Why aren't they all out on the street? Paupers. I don't get it. If you and I receive stolen goods, they're going to take that shit away from us and then going to throw us in jail.
You can't take away knowledge. You can't take away the connections. You can't take away the intangible assets that come with being in and running in those kinds of circles and having that kind of money. I'm talking with my mouth full, and I apologize, but I mean,
see, Peach, the immediate family did, but not the entire family. Not everybody who got ill-gotten gains lost it.
So in the last 10 years, I've seen a lot more notable names, corporations, do things that were basically illegal and get away with it. And if they do get fined, it's far less than the gains that they get. My best example of this is all the different health insurances and how they won't pay out if you go to the emergency room. Kaiser won't pay unless you go to Kaiser hospitals, and there's so few of them in the city that you're in. If your employer bought Kaiser insurance for you, your employer hates you. That's basically it, right?
Right.
If you show up at the emergency room at any other hospital that isn't the Kaiser hospital, they will not cover it. And so the insurance that you figure is the safety net that's going to keep you from being in medical debt and having to do medical bankruptcy doesn't work. And if anyone ever pushes the issue that, after certain laws were enacted nationwide that we shouldn't have this happening, if you win, they might get a little fine, a little slap on the head. You might actually get your money. But by and large, they're winning because people don't fight it, and because the fines are so much smaller than the gains that they're making by just not approving things that they should approve.
Yeah, and this isn't the same because this isn't actually a corruption thing, but again, it's that whole they kind of view it as a cost of doing business. I was bidding on a project for a waste digester a few months back, and I was talking to the general contractor, one of the general contractors we were providing a bid for our work, and there was liquidated damages in there that, okay, if you didn't get a certain thing done by a certain date, you're going to have to pay a certain amount of money per day until it was done. And unfortunately, due to the supply chain issues, it was going to be literally impossible. They wanted it done within 180 days. And I'm like, the parts that I order, I may not get them for 180 days. So there's no way that we were going to have that built into a panel, tested, put on site, installed. So I put in our quote. I said, look, I can't guarantee. I'm telling you right now, I will not be able to meet that. Nobody can, because, no one can get the parts in time. So I don't know what to do. He said, don't worry about it. He goes, we know that. He says, we basically just priced that in. We know we build that into our price. We know we're going to be behind by, 90 days probably. So we just when we quote to them, we just add that we know we're going to get fined a certain amount and it's cost of doing business, and that's basically what a lot of regulations have been so watered down that's basically what it's become. It's become cost of doing business, and in a lot of cases, it's not even that the regulation is necessarily too weak, but the problem is there's not enough people enforcing the regulations. Not enough investigators, not enough people that are out there, making sure that in the compliance side or investigation side. And so, which things just get done. Like Bernie, think about Bernie Madoff. You mentioned he almost got caught at one point, and there was a guy raising all the red flags. But because Bernie schmoozed Bernie Madoff schmoozed the guys above him, they're like, it's no big deal. It's fine, no big deal. And then that was like halfway through. So you think about how many more people got ripped off because, there was literally just one dude who was interested in paying attention to this, and that which wasn't enough.
Right.
It's funny you were talking about like the cost of doing business, right? A lot of pot shops. In the state of New Jersey, there's a lot of them that really aren't legal, and they don't really hide the fact that they're selling because the fine that they're going to get, it just isn't much of a deterrent. They're just like, it's just the cost of doing business. So there's a lot of places in the state. There's even actually these vans. It's like a purple van. It's the Bud Bus.
So basically, you're implying,
on the side.
You're implying that the fine is less than the license.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or the license is just such a difficult process, they don't think it's worth it. So
Right.
yeah, there's like the Bud Bus. They travel all over the place. They have certain places that they park all the time, and they can't legally sell, but they do, because the fine it's not a deterrent.
Yeah.
Illegal pot sales, I know, right? Go figure.
That's never happened before. That's a lie.
So another example I have is Nestle bottling water. They have licenses to pull so much water out of the sources that they are at. If they go over that amount, they can get fined. The amount of the fine doesn't meet the amount of profit they're going to make for taking that water from the source in the first place. So they just work it into the cost of doing business.
Right.
And they don't even get caught.
Right. And no one throttles them back. Right. Instead of saying, hey, you've gone over your limit, we're going to cut you off. They don't do that.
No.
So
I mean, why don't they look? I mean, it's possible to look at these businesses' books, right? If you wanted to set a fine, why don't you just set a fine like on a sliding scale that's relative to whatever that business, like if they've gone over X amount, then that is the amount that they must pay in the fine. That way you're not gouging somebody that's too small to deal with it, and you're not underdoing somebody that, is like a huge company like Nestle, which is arguably a pretty evil establishment.
You just stumbled onto the reason why it is the way it is. They prevent competition by having these fines that exist, that if a smaller company does that, it'll put them out of business. It's not a glitch. It's a feature of the system.
Yeah, they sandbag them. Like, people do that all the time. Just like wait for the little guy to die off and then come in and swoop everything up, and
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. Like with 401k, I have a 401k for my employees, right? So there's a form you have to file every year. It's the stupidest fucking form. It's like basically the same information every year. It's literally the same, and there's like one number that changes, and that's it. It's stupid that you have to do this every year. But the first year, I didn't realize that I never noticed a notification that it had to get done, so I didn't get done. And then I get a thing from the IRS saying you didn't file this stupid form. It's literally one page, and I was not on the hook potentially for $100,000 in fines. So I had to pay a lawyer $5,000 to get that down to like $6,000.
The fuck?
Which is another scam, because again, the lawyer, because who makes the laws? Lawyers.
Yeah.
So basically, I had to poke out $11,000 to avoid $100,000, all because of a form. And the thing is, all that information the state and the feds already have anyway. And then now, I do it now every year. But now I get this thing from ADP, like, oh well, if you pay us $1,100, we'll do it for you, so you don't miss it and get fined. You know, it's like again more fucking bilking. And again, $1,100 is nothing to a big company, right? But you know,
That's probably some executive's lunch break.
right. That's somebody's weekly salary for for me. But if it's nothing for a big company. And again, that's the reason why I am in favor. I'm not going to reiterate, but too much. But the whole idea that there's actually a business case for universal health care, that it actually helps small business. That's probably why we don't have it.
Okay, can I change the subject?
Sure.
Somebody posted on Facebook a receipt from a restaurant in Miami, Florida. And it's just a disgusting display of wealth. There's 6 guests. So there's 6 people, 6 customers. And the total is $6,228. One of the items on the receipt is 6 glasses of Johnny Walker Blue Label.
They had better be eating at the restaurant at the end of the universe where the cow comes by live and you're drinking Pan Galactic Dargle Blasters. What in the actual fuck? Who eats $1,000?
$552 for the Johnny Walker Blue Label alone.
Is that
There's
for
one person
each glass or for the 6 glasses?
for the 6.
Okay. So it's
One
like,
person ordered a golden tomahawk.
what's a golden tomahawk?
Yeah.
It's a tomahawk steak covered in gold leaf.
What?
Okay.
No, that's ridiculous.
$1,000. It's $1,000 steak.
That's bullcrap. You can buy gold leaf at the store for $8 and a tiny little stamp pad thing. I know because I do calligraphy and illumination, and you can just buy gold leaf for like $8 and a tiny little real gold leaf. Like that's what you do illuminated text with.
Well,
it's not expensive. Actually,
this is the thing that gets me about. Again, it's become a big trend to put gold on everything, and to me, that's not a sign of that's a sign of that's tacky shit. Like,
just save the bottom of your Goldschlager for crying out loud.
Exactly, it's Donald Trump, golden toilet bullshit.
I'm guessing this is. I guess it's a bottle. I guess it's a bottle. 24 karat gold. Vintage champagne. Gold de Brut. $1,500 for the bottle.
Wow. Did you know that champagne can only be called champagne if it comes from the Champagne region of France?
Yeah. Well, here's one thing I thought was kind of interesting. A few years ago, John Cleese had this program. It was about wine because he decided to get into wine. And he was interested in it, and they were doing these tests, and they basically had like the $4 bottle of wine, and the $20 bottle of wine, and the $100 bottle of wine, and the $500 bottle of wine. And no one could really tell the difference.
Not unless people usually can't, unless they're super, super trained in it. There's a very funny comedy sketch. I'm trying to think of the guy, the main guy who does the show. His name is Brendan, and they do a kind of an improv show, a game show where they're given a prompt, and then the contestants on the game show must portray that prompt. And one of them was something about a sommelier who's never tasted wine, and he starts off by going, tonight we have a reddish purple selection. Like he goes, like he's just like going on, and he like takes it, and he's like, oh, this is terrible. You paid $90 for this? Like, and like this guy goes back into the sales routine. Like he's trying to take the cork out, he breaks it off, and he's like, and you push the rest in. It provides the flavor for.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, even a lot of sommeliers, when they get tested, they kind of fail. There's a lot of it that's just pretense. That's why I like German wines. There's no pretense in German wines. We make wine to drink, and it's just, I think everything from the super dry to the Liebfrau milk, which is like ultra, like sickeningly sweet, and you got everything in between, and it's just drink this shit. No one's got German wine sitting in a cellar aging. No one does that.
It's what you drink out of the skulls of your enemy.
It's Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Well, I am currently sitting in the heart of the Californian wine country. And I would be remiss, therefore, if I didn't say that. I mean, I have enjoyed many a bottle of cheap wine. There's no doubt about it. And it's also true to say that wine is not necessarily better just because it's expensive, but really, really, really good wine that's really, 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 like you didn't even know how good wine could be good wine is always expensive.
I don't know. See, like for New Year's Eve, 99 into 2000, I decided, since it's special occasion, so I went out and bought a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. It's like $100 bottle of champagne. And then I got like two bottles that just said Spumante, because like we were broke, and so after $100, I'm not spending. I think I spent $4 a piece on them. And by the end of that week, I had friends come over the next day, and we had some, and we had basically after a week, after it had gone flat, I dumped out half a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and we finished like those 2 bottles of Spumante, and like the first bottle of New Year's Eve, and then the next bottle the next day when friends came over. It was way better than the Veuve Clicquot.
I never did like wine. I just never. Usually, the more expensive it is, too, the less I like it. But you know what? Give me a bottle of like a blackberry Arbor Mist, and that's good stuff. I'll drink that, and that's like $10. So yeah, Arbor Mist is
Per bottle or per box?
for a bottle. Don't think I ever had box wine. Oh, I might have.
Box wine it can be less obnoxious than you think, but some of it's also pretty bad. But I have had good box wine. I can't deny it. Yeah. I mean, by good, I mean, does it make me smirk like that? Doesn't make me do that. But I have had so much really good cheap wine that to go out of my way to drink expensive wine, even though I recognize that the really, really, really seriously good shit is always expensive, I don't drink enough of it to figure out which one that is, and I don't want to have to experiment my way through $80 bottles of wine to find out.
Yeah.
Most of it just tastes like vinegar to me.
I will say, like, I have a friend who is actually a licensed sommelier, and when he was going to get his licensing, like going through that process of doing that, he used to have wine and cheese parties at his house, and it was like the upper limit for buying a bottle of wine was like $25. I mean, it wasn't go out and spend a whole bunch of money, but we'd all get together and everybody would bring a bottle of wine and some cheese, and then it was actually quite fascinating because he always had a piece of paper where he would ask questions, and these questions were relative to the things that sommeliers are actually looking for when they're tasting wine, like and it wasn't just like, how does this smell? It was like, what do you smell in this? And then it would give like adjectives so that you actually could then sniff this thing and know what you were trying to pull out of that like concoction of aromas. And it was really quite fun and fascinating, I thought, to do, because I'm a smell person, and I smelling, like, if I think one of the coolest jobs to have would be like the noses that make perfumes, which get paid exorbitant amounts of money.
I don't know. Some people smell for a living. Some people smell for a hobby. I just smell incidentally.
Smell on the bus. I mean, I'm just saying. I got told not to be loud once on the bus, and I said, well, other people can smell really bad in my air, so I guess you're just going to have to hear my voice in your air. Like, turn your voice down, turn your smell down. Nobody ever says anything about that. I don't know. Like,
speak for yourself. Oh, sorry. I'm just in the shower.
I'm just saying, I never see anybody on the bus that smells bad actually like get told that, they need to get off the bus and like go put on deodorant. That never happens.
Wow. Yeah. I'm not sure if I have. In the UK, maybe. I used to ride the bus every day. You see a lot of shit. That's for sure. Public transport inside of life. That's for sure.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I'll be late to work this morning because a guy on the bus in front of me got stabbed. So
Yo home, smell you later.
Yeah, they love that.
I don't even know what bus drivers make, but it can't possibly be enough. Considering, like I say, if you're a bus driver, you're driving a bus 8 hours a day, every day in a big city, you're going to see every manner of human being in every condition of human being that's out there, you know.
Yeah,
And
the routes that are through some sketch neighborhoods too, man, I don't know, like I always rode the bus in relatively good neighborhoods, except for maybe one short stint of my life. And even still, but I can't even imagine though. I mean, now with the sheer amount of like that homelessness has just skyrocketed, and you're just like, I don't know. It seems like there's just so much more poverty, and it's due to very sad things, right? I don't know. I don't know. It's just,
when
it's terrible.
when I lived in the UK, I watched several times where people literally get thrown off of a bus, you know. And I think to myself,
How's that legal? How is it not assault to do that? Well,
well, I
typically
mean,
that
maybe it's not legal, but it happened. I'm not sure if it's legal
I
or
mean,
not.
unless it's like a
I wouldn't be
legal
able to
person, like
answer that question, but I've
cop.
definitely seen it happen. And like I've also seen bus drivers come out from that. In Britain, they're mostly behind a little plastic cubicle, right? And I've seen them come out of the cubicle and to get rough with people because people are about to get into it on the bus and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
like I say, bus drivers deal with a lot of crap, and I frankly, I would be very surprised if they were compensated proportional to the amount of
Unfucking likely.
yeah.
And I mean, I want to clarify too that like I'm not saying that like poor people are bad. What I'm trying to say is that where there is poverty, we also know that there are increased crime rates. And so
Well,
when you're driving buses through, when you're driving buses or whatever through places like that is going to be, I think, a hazard of the job. So
yeah, I mean, I'd go even further than that. I don't even think it goes down. You need to be in bad places. If you think about it, generally speaking, people that ride on buses are either elderly people and/or economically underprivileged people. You know, people that can afford a car, and especially in America, generally have a car. So if you're on the bus, you're probably one of those two categories I mentioned. Or you just don't care and you want to save money and get on the bus, which to me is in California, that's extremely rare. I have two friends in California that back in the 80s told me they would never get on the bus no matter what, because they would not want to be seen on a bus. And
Oh no.
Dude, really? Wow.
I always have had a car, but I used to take the bus for years into work because I worked in downtown Seattle, and the only place to park there is in a parking garage if you rent your parking space or on the street. And then that involves what? Driving around looking for a parking meter all morning long. So or in a pay lot, you can also rent spaces like in a diamond parking lot as well, just like you would in a parking garage. But I mean, that's, unless that goes into your contract at your job or something that you get a parking space, you're looking at another $400 to $600 a month,
right?
Just to be able to park. Yeah, just to be able to park your car, right? So, and it's not like, I mean, people are already expected to pay for their gas and insurance and everything else.
You're basically working like for a week or part of a week just to park your car at work.
Yeah.
So I did work at a hospital in their system. If you wanted to have a parking space that was close to the hospital, you had to pay for it to the hospital. And it was a rent system. And then they passed out what they called eco passes to everyone. And everyone had a free bus or light rail pass. And you could just get on the bus every time you wanted to go to work and ride for free. And it served two purposes. One was to make it not as bad that they were charging rent for parking spaces. But two, in case of a snowstorm, you have no excuse that you can't get your car because it was like plowed in and the snowbank is too big for you to get up your street, or like the roads are iced over. If the public transit's running, you can still get to work. So they gave us all eco passes, and I used them a few times. You could use them even when you weren't working.
Yeah, we had discounts on bus passes when I worked there, so we could get a bus pass for very cheap every month, and that was what I would do, was just use the company discount to get a bus pass, and I
Yeah.
just took a bus. And
All right,
I
well, I
used,
am
I
going to
used it
take
more
off.
when I wasn't working than
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
This was
Rainier.
fun.
I used it more when I wasn't working than when I was, because I didn't like to pay for parking for rock concerts downtown.
yeah,
So I would use the public transit to go into those, but I would use my car to go to work.
That's interesting. I first started riding buses when I lived in Alaska, because sometimes when it was snowing outside, I literally would rather trust the bus driver who does it every single day for a living than risk driving in the snow myself, especially after I had my accident when I hit black ice, like 4 months after I moved there, 3 months after I moved there. And that kind of put the fear in me of driving in snow. So I thought, well, these guys, they're driving a 15-ton vehicle. It's probably less likely to just careen off the road for no reason, hopefully. And they drive, they know what they're doing. They do it every day. So he doesn't want to get in a crash, and neither do I. Whereas, I don't know. I rarely do I like putting my life in other people's hands, but in that instance, I thought it was a good idea.
I'm just like, I'm cracking up at the whole, what do you call a doctor that graduates at the bottom of their class? Doctor.
Yeah, right.
What do you call a bus driver that graduates at the bottom of bus driving school?
Bus driver. Yeah, good point.
You're probably right though. Like if they graduated bus driving school though, they still have leveled up like vehicle driving skills. They have at least like
We're doing
drive
8 hours
times
a day,
3 or 4 on their character sheet. I don't know. So I one time when I was in my 20s, I drove it snowed, and I basically ruined my vehicle beyond my ability to repair, because I bent my front axle it had snowed and I was trying to turn a corner in the snow, and I just slid over to where the curb was, and my car kind of, I was going slow, but not slow enough, and my car just bam hit the curb, and it actually bent my front axle in my car, and I was never able to replace that, and I was terrified thereafter of driving in the snow. And it's only been in the recent few years that I've kind of ventured out and driven in the snow myself again. Like at some point, you got to learn. At some point, you got to learn how to do that, I guess. So I figured, hey, if I can parallel park a trailer, I can drive in the snow now. Like I'm sure I've got that ability, or at least I'm better at it than I was when I was 20. So, but it scared me for a long time to try. I would just be like, nope, I'm not driving in the snow. I will have someone else do that for me.
Well, I come from a warm part of California, and so we never had snow to contend with. So when I moved to Alaska, it was a brand new thing for me. And it wasn't snow that I got my accident in. It was actually black ice. I never even heard of black ice. I didn't know such a thing existed.
Oh, that's scary stuff, dude.
I was literally just driving down the road, minding my own business. I wasn't even going to speed limit, and my car just started fishtailing back and forth for no reason. And I obviously overcorrected the first time, and then it was all downhill from there, so to speak. And we could have gotten killed. I'm very lucky we were wearing our seatbelts.
That sounds black ice is scary to even walk on. Like when you know that it's icy out, but you can't, because it's like maybe freezing rain or something, oh no, got something in my teeth. But yeah, it's like then you can't see, you're just outside walking, and all of a sudden, bam, slip, fall. Terrible. Ice is scary, way scarier than snow.
Yeah, way scarier than snow, and harder to if your car starts sliding on ice, there's really nothing you can do but like not make it worse. That's all you can do. You just have to hope that it stops before you actually go off.
Yeah.
The hope that you get traction again, because there's nothing you can do. Speeding up, slamming on the brakes could both make it worse. You just got to hope for the best.
Turn into it.
Yeah.
That's what they tell you to do. Lean into it.
Yeah.
It was funny. Years ago, I was working at a tech support job between engineering jobs, and we supported Disney, one of the companies that we supported. And so the person from Disney, she came and she was teaching us like basically how to support the Disney way. And so the thing is, she was from California. She had never driven on snow and ice, and it's Buffalo, so snow and ice live there. And so she got into an accident because she didn't know that ice was slippery. I'm like, the snow is slippery. I'm like, it's ice that falls from the sky. How do you not? You ever see an ice cube hit the table and slide around?
Next up tonight, water is wet.
Yeah, I was shocked that she was like, I didn't know. How can you not know? It's ice. Snow is made of ice.
What do you think people are doing when they're skating on it? Like, how has somebody made it to adulthood? And I mean, do they live on the equator? What?
Yeah, and I get that you might not know how to drive on it, like you're not familiar with how to do it, but just to even be shocked that it is slippery, I was just like, what?
Did you ever drop an ice cube ever before in your whole life, ever? Like,
exactly. That's literally what I said to her. Like, did you ever drop an ice cube? Like, you ever see what that shit does on the floor or the table? That slides all over the fucking place.
Wow, that seems extra.
Oh well, here was her defense. She didn't
Perception
realize
was her dump stat.
She didn't realize that snow was made of ice. And I'm like, wow, that's
yeah, that makes it better. That makes it better.
Maybe it wasn't perception. That was her dump stat.
Yeah, I think she had a lot of dump stats.
Hey, Galen, are you there, or is it just your icon there at the moment?
I'm here.
How are you feeling?
I'm ill.
Yeah.
Oh no, like COVID?
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
I had as you know, like 2 decades ago, a severe accident and head injury, and I spent over $100,000 on dental bills. But something underneath the bridge, and the jaw broke. It's like severe.
Wow.
I bet. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's like collapse, but it messed up the other side of the mouth too. And just to do one part, dentists are asking like $20,000. And so right now I can't afford to get anything done, and I'm not going to let them just rip out my entire mouth. So I have to be on antibiotics, and I only could be on them so long. So right now I'm just going to have to be on antibiotics since I can't pay for it. It's really something almost like a hospital should do, because it's in my jaw to the down to the bottom, and it feels like a tire went flat.
Ouch.
So, yeah, and and it made like all the gums sore and the face hurt. And that's on top of the peripheral neuropathy. So,
wow, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, this year sucks.
Yeah. It sucks for a lot of people, that's for sure. We were talking about that before you came on the show. I mean, Sister Dangerous had a tough year. I've had a tough year. Autumn was here earlier. She said she had a tough year.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And Joe, have you how would you rate this year on a scale of 10 being really good and 1 being, I want to redo?
Diarrhea.
-3.
-3. Wow. That's pretty bad then.
Yeah. Mom died. I got COVID. Bunch of other stuff that I won't go into, but
yeah. It's pretty tough year for sure. So I am, like I said before, though, even though it's just an arbitrary date on a calendar, I am looking forward to next year. Even psychologically, I think it does something of just having just something to look forward to as a change, and hope. You're just, I guess, hoping rather irrationally that there will be changes in your life that will come with a change on the calendar, I guess. You know what I mean? Which is just illogical as hell.
It is funny. I mean, you think of how arbitrary the years are, but yet I think obviously the fact that the winter is kind of closing. We kind of close up during the winter, and we kind of hide away and everything. I can see how why psychologically it just seems like the spring is renewal, right? All the stuff starts to come back to life. So but yeah, it's completely arbitrary. It doesn't actually mean anything,
right? Yeah, I mean, that happened this year, but it didn't fix my life. Do you know what I mean? For example, the spring happened, but that didn't didn't do it for me, unfortunately. In fact, that's when everything started going to shit. So yeah,
I would rate it that it's I'm still alive.
right.
Other than that, it's just rock bottom. I can't think of. I don't know what would be worse. I mean, if I literally just burned up to death, I don't think it would be worse.
Wow. I mean, you must have a hard time concentrating if you're in pain so often.
It's just not. It's not just the pain. It's just like there's just so much bad shit at every turn. It's
Right.
just awful. It's just like I start off the year, I ended my engagement. I mean, it was like ugly and stupid, and I can't stand people just being, ignorant for no reason, racist, awful. Like when you try to be around people and you're good to people, and then for no fucking reason other than just to take out their shit on you because they've had shit taken out on them, even though you've been good to them, because they don't know how. Like people do that all the time in all kinds of ways. It's just like it's grotesque. This world is a wreck. And then I had as Michael knows, Daniel killed himself, committed suicide. Then a childhood friend committed suicide who I was very close to.
Wow.
Then there was another death, a poet I know. He committed suicide. And another friend, he had cancer and he died. Then another friend died. Then another friend died.
Wow.
And then my cousin's son, who's like my son, he committed suicide just now. Wow. So it's just like it just doesn't quit.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I am so sorry to hear all that. That's quite a litany of, as you say, bad shit.
Yeah, it just doesn't stop. I'm just ready. Like, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and that's the thing. I mean, and it's no wonder why people are depressed, right? I mean, there's all that trauma. That's like just like for Galen, all that trauma, like in a short period of time. I mean, that's a shit ton to take. And I'm trying to figure out for myself because I suffer from depression, but like. Because somebody said, well, maybe you're born with something or the other. I'm like, yeah, but there was a time when I wasn't like this, at least not to this depth. So, I'm just trying to figure out, like, now that I turned 54 this year, and okay, is there any way to get back to the earlier level of mild depression that I was probably born with?
I'll just go back to being anxious and leave the depression behind.
Yeah. Like how can I shed, the whatever, traumas I've experienced in the last, 54 years and so I've gotten to this weird place where I'm at right now where I'm like, I'm not in a good place, but I'm not in like my usual bad places. I'm kind of floating like near the bottom and I'm I guess I'm a little bit numb, but not numb enough that I don't feel anything. Just enough that I don't feel like horrible. Which I guess is an improvement, right? Compared to where I'm very often at. But the thing is too, like as far as going to see somebody and talking. I mean, I'm sure there may be somebody out there, but I'm very picky, and like one of the big problems for me, like I'd like to see a black therapist for some of the issues that I think only a black person would also understand, or at least be able to relate to. But finding a black therapist who isn't also very religious, because I used to be part of a group, two groups, and it was like a black business owners in New Jersey, to try to keep it in the family, as it were, and try to promote one another. And so I said, hey, looking for a secular black therapist. And one person responded to me and they said, oh yeah, I am. And I went to their website and there was like clearly like religious undertones. I'm like, no, you're either a liar or you don't know what secular means.
That's what I was about to say. Might have misunderstood the word secular. The thing is, Joe, you've just identified a hole in the market. It's not too late, buddy, to become that therapist.
Like I'm the yeah, I don't know that I'd be the good person for people to come to.
I'll say this about Joe is like, like he's way too tribalistic for me on a lot of things. But even with that, I could go to Joe and say, hey, I want to talk to you. And Joe sets the universe aside, and I'm a human, and that's it. And yeah. I think you get just remember whoever you get, just so they're fucking smart and they have a heart. Yeah. They have the ability to love. That's all that matters. And they have insight and can understand what you're fucking saying and be human to you, because you have the ability, and you got to find someone else who has the ability, like any other relationship.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. And you need someone to hear that. Yeah.
I just think that's I think it's a tall order. That's all.
Sure. You have a lot of love in you, and you also have a lot of pain, but that comes with it. Yeah. That's what comes with having all that love. You have to have. There's going to be. This world is tough. It's a motherfucker.
We had a virtual Shiva today. So my wife's brother, his mother-in-law, and I've known her for about 20 years, and she was about the same age as my grandmother, and so I met her shortly before my own grandmother died, and so since then she's been kind of like my substitute grandma, and so she just died this earlier this week. She was 99.
My condolences.
Holy shit! Sorry.
Yeah, wonderful lady. And one thing I said in the comments in the Shiva, I said, seeing all this outpouring of people, because this is like the third day of the Shiva, and there was like 65 people in this Zoom session. It was amazing, and I said that because I had said about when I spoke, I had said about how how she was so full of love and that and tolerance and acceptance, and how when I met her, like right off the bat, welcome to the family kind of thing, and she was so amazing, and I said in the comments, I typed in the chat, I said, to me, this is the sign of a life well lived, that at the end of it, that there's people there's so many people that you touched in a positive way, that care, that they're going to miss you, and that you had a positive impact on them. And I've said in the past, like, to me, the worst death is one that goes unmarked and unnoticed and uncared about or cared for. Like, that's a life wasted. Like, it's one thing if you're the last of your group of friends to die, that's probably going to happen. That is God. But if that's not the case, if you die and like you go and make no difference in the world, then that's like, to me, that means that was a wasted life, And I don't understand. That's why I'll never understand like certain sects of Buddhism, like their whole goal is to like leave no mark and like basically like no evidence that they were even here. I'm like, well, what's the fucking point of that?
They believe in karma, Joe. They believe in karma. I mean, there's a whole philosophy that underpins that. It's not as simple as that, right? There's this whole thing about the less you leave behind, the less reason there is to come back, basically. See?
Yeah, but like I said, to me, when you're here, if you're not, I mean, we're all going to do good things, we're going to do bad things, but if on balance, we didn't have a positive influence on the life that was here, to me, that was wasted time.
I feel similarly about my own life, but I wouldn't project that on anybody else. That's all I'm saying. I definitely feel that way.
Yeah, they're welcome to think anything they want about it, but I know for myself, when I see that, I'm like, well, I don't, I think I my own opinion of what they've done. Not that my opinion matters to them.
Right.
that wow, you just came here and you just consumed and you did nothing and you went away. Big fucking deal. Why? That's why, like, to me, it's like, if I can help people, it's just in me to do that. I can't always. That's one thing I had to learn when I was younger. I had to learn to meet it out. Like, there had to be limits, and knowing when and who, because there were some people that, they see you as an easy mark and they take advantage of that. Right. but so I had to, that was a lot of pain, many painful lessons, but it's just in me to do that. So I mean, I can't help it, and I hope, I know I know sometimes I'm hard to deal with. I have a temper, and I can be grading on people and all these other things, but I hope at the end of the day, I hope that whenever I do die, I hope that there's a bunch of people say, damn, Joe's gone, and man, I'm gonna miss him. He was really cool. He made life better when he was around for the most part. Maybe not every day, but that I mattered, in a positive way.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, like, see, to me, I agree with everything you just said, but then it's also about sort of something a philosophy of mine is like you can never really. What scale does one use to measure positivity of that nature by? For example, my former girlfriend had her best friend's father died, and he was a really big shot. He was a philanthropist. He was a head fellow at a very big teaching university where he taught literally dozens and dozens of people how to be heart surgeons throughout the course of his career. So not only did he save lots of lives in his own career, but taught people how to save lives. And by that, I mean, so his existence touched literally countless people's lives, right? And I don't want to have to compare myself to someone like that to think I've left a positive contribution on this planet, right? Comparing yourself to other people in life and in death is an unprofitable exercise, in my opinion. You can only have standards you hold up for yourself and hope that you live up to them.
Well, right, and I agree with that, but I think it's more of like I'm saying on balance of your life, right? All of us, we do positive things and negative things, and if we put them on a scale, which way is the scale going to go? And that's so it's all relative to you, not relative to the world or anything like that.
Right, yeah. But I mean, like I did a video once and I got that funk channel called "I'm Not a Good Person, Are You?" And in the video, I discussed how, I mean, again, it's a matter of putting things on the scales. And, most people, if you ask them, are you trustworthy? They're going to say yes, right? Most people. And I guarantee you, every single person that says yes has lied to most of the people they care about and has been lied to by most of the people that they care about. And so, like, are they really trustworthy? Well, we all do. We all have been a liar at some point in our life. So are any of us trustworthy? I mean, do you know what I mean? There's certain, I don't know. I think you get where I'm going. The measurements of good and bad. I mean, how bad does someone have to be before they're actually a bad person? If you cheat on your wife, are you a bad person? Or is that just a bad action?
How about if you're consistently a hypocrite?
To make you a bad person, right? Hypocrisy is another one, right? Everybody at some point in their life, some people never stop being a hypocrite, but at some point in your life, we've all been a hypocrite about certain things, and you have to make a absolutely Olympian effort not to be a hypocrite at any point in your life. And I don't think most people have that level of integrity and or willpower to make that effort.
It's the thing about it is, are we a learning oriented person, and can we be humble enough in the ventures we do? And even if we're heroic, are we going to be even humble about it there? Okay. I mean, so many people are vain and then they go right back into doing something wretched when they didn't even do anything good. And a lot of people can't even accept love and friendship, fellowship of any kind of kinship with people because they've been hurt. And so there's just so much ugliness everywhere with people. And so it's very easy. Even when you get ahead, it's like people get greedy for it, and of course, love and greed are those are not compatible. But I would say still hypocrisy and being consistently. You don't have to be an idea of good. Good. There's a difference between actions and ideas. We have to be in the world, not just exist, but we also have to just do more into being. And embody, not live up to an idea, because you'll be called you'll just suffer and rot because you can't experience actuality.
Well, in my own personal philosophy, goodness or badness is not something you are; it's something you do.
Yeah.
You know, and so like it really depends. And to Joe's point a moment ago, you know, the balance. I mean, where do you put the fulcrum? How do you know where the middle of that is? Because we've all done bad shit and we've all done good shit. I have been universally kind to people for most of my life, right? As a active ambition of mine to be kind to people until or unless they give me a reason not to be kind. But I've still broken hearts, right? And those are people I loved, right? So I mean, where's the fulcrum?
I don't think it has to do with a single action. I think it has to do with a pattern of behavior and intent.
Sure. Yeah, but intent, I agree. Intent matters a fucking hell of a lot, but it's not the be all and end all. You know, I mean, I can't even count how many times people told me, I'm sorry, but I did, because I didn't mean to do it. And it's like, you know, not meaning to doesn't necessarily make a goddamn bit of difference if the result is the same.
Yeah, non-apologies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, if someone runs over my kid, I'm going to be pretty pissed off about it. If they shoot my kid, I'm going to be more angry, even though the same result happened. My kid is dead. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's my fault. That's my flaw, you know, but something about this is what gets to Sister Danger's point about intent, though, right? The person probably didn't intend to run over my kid, but they almost certainly intended to shoot them, because it's hard to shoot somebody. You have to try, you know?
Yeah, for me, you know, you're right. I mean, well, you know, I think it's I did a video about this a while back that I basically made the point about, because it had to do with how you deal with people who do things that you think are wrong, and this was from the social media perspective of people, you know, that were saying and do things harmful and like calling people, you know, calling out, and the whole call out culture thing. Because I think cancel culture is bullshit, but I don't think that exists. But I think there is a call out culture, and basically my thing is somebody who is who does something unintentional that causes harm, but doesn't want to. That's a person that can learn to be different and to be better than they were. Someone who intentionally, not that they can't, but it's a lot harder. And so the example I made of somebody who was bringing you a cup of tea and their shoelaces were undone. They tripped over the shoelaces and they spilled tea on you. You're burned. You're harmed. Versus somebody who comes over and says, "Hey, motherfucker," and just throws the tea in your lap.
Right.
Who are you going to be more angry? I mean, you're equally hurt in both cases. But I think most of us would say, "Hey, the person who dumped tea on me on purpose, I'm more angry at them than I am the person who did it by accident."
Yeah.
And
unless it's a black woman.
Well, yeah, this is true. But that's the thing, and so it came. My point to them was like, hey, look, you know, sure, if somebody does something wrong, I'm not saying don't say anything, but if you know, if somebody who I know is not, they go out of their way to not be racist, right? They're trying to be anti-racist, and they say something because we're all indoctrinated, and they say something that the thing they said is racist. They're not a racist, but they said a racist thing, or they supported a racist idea or whatever. I'm not going to scream and yell at them the same way I would someone who's in the Klan who's calling me the N-word and all that. I'm going to say, hey, you know, you may not have realized it, but and I got accused some people of, you know, of like what was it acceptability politics. I'm like, no. It's using the appropriate response and trying to get a particular reaction. If I'm just telling a KKK guy off, I'm just telling him off because he did something wrong, and I'm letting him know in no uncertain terms that it's bad. If someone's like my friend and they said or did something racist, and I know they're not generally racist, well, I don't, you know, screaming and yelling at them is probably not going to reach them in a positive way.
Right.
So I have a belief that they're willing to change because I know who they are and what they're like. But there are people who basically they're you know, the only thing I would say as far as, you know, I guess I find overall cancel culture is bullshit, but I have heard people where, you know, you make one mistake and they write you off. And depending on what the mistake is, I could see it. But for anything, it didn't matter how big or how small. You're not pure enough, so therefore, fuck you forever. And look, I've blocked a lot of people, but there's a lot of people I've unblocked. Some people I blocked multiple times, because it wasn't that I wanted to get rid of them forever. It's like I couldn't deal with them right then, and I needed to separate myself, and then I needed to calm down and get over it and realize, okay, on balance, that person is a more positive than they are a negative, and I'd rather have them around than not. Even whatever the issue is, but. So yeah, I don't think I think there's the thing too as far as intent goes. There's the I didn't mean to, but then was the person being cautious and just little things, or were they being callous, right? Because if the person who's because that was the middle of the road one was like, okay, this person's they're not trying to dump tea on you, but they're being they're not taking any care, they're not paying attention, they basically
a malicious lack of give a fuck.
Exactly.
People who are antagonistic.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not as bad as the antagonistic person, but they're not as
some people. They could show a lot more care.
Right. Exactly. And to that person, maybe I'm going to deal with a little more sternly than the person who tripped over a shoelace. Right.
Like when I was writing about Harry's death in his poem that I posted the other day on his funeral, which was Friday. I got to be honest in it. I'm not trying to rub, it in anybody's face, because I have certain issues over his suicide with a lot of people. I know to say that I have issues is an understatement.
Right.
I'm furious. But I'm saving that for what I'm putting into my writing, which I have a whole new book project where I'm throwing everything, a lot of poetry in it too. But, I'm sure that's not going to be a lot of friends writing that book. It's just going to be one vicious fucking philosophical book, but it'll be good. I have to say that one person I know who would really like that book would be Joe. Joe will be like, I can't believe you wrote this. It's like, fuck. This is like good. This is what I've been wanting to read. I know of all the people I know, I think Joe would like it. It's a very James Baldwin type book, of all things.
Nice.
But Joe, just one thing on you. You don't have to go, I'm upset, I have to block them. If there are certain people who don't know you, I understand that. But there's certain people who do. And you just need your space. If you just told me and sent me a message, fuck off, I would be like, well, don't communicate with Joe for a while. I'd be like, I'll wait till you're ready. I'm cool. I know you. I really know you. So, I've listened to you so many times, where I've come and talked to you. So, there are certain people have a different scale. It's contextual to the people you're doing it to. Certain people, you get frustrated, they'll understand. And even if you do block them, they'll understand. I do.
What I've been trying to do lately is, like, if it's a Facebook thing, I'll unfollow them for a bit. Like, okay, I can't do, I don't want to see what they have to say for a while. This way they're not blocked, but I'm not hearing what they have to say for a while. So.
I hate everyone on Facebook. I just like fuck everybody.
Hey, while we have a little bit of a lull here, I thought I wanted to bring up a subject. So recently I watched a movie. I mentioned it on my Facebook the other day. It's on Netflix, and it's called Farha, Farha.
Yeah.
And it is a very short, independent movie. And I have a lot of things to say about the movie. But first of all, I would say that it's just in terms of, if you like cinema as an art form, as a thing, Farha is a film, whereas a lot of things you see in the cinema are movies. This is a film. You know what I mean? Do you understand the distinction I'm trying to make without me having to go down a rabbit hole about it? You know, like Gandhi is a film, Back to the Future is a movie. All right, that kind of thing. Anyway, and it's the Israeli government right now is lobbying Netflix or pressuring Netflix, whichever way you want to put it, to pull the film off because the film knows what happens when basically in this village when Israel was created. You know, and literally, minor spoiler: the movie starts off with her and her friends just talking about life and what they hope the future is going to be like, and I hope I could go to college before my dad marries me off, kind of 1948 Palestinian girl talk. And it's just the middle of a normal day, and all of a sudden there's explosions and distance, and the rest is history, as they say. And I mean, it's literally the most profound movie I've ever seen because the symbolism isn't rubbed in your face. It's extremely subtle, but it's potent. It's poignant. It's a great movie. And the Israeli government, in my opinion, is trying to get it removed because these sorts of abuses continue to this day in the West Bank, and they're trying to say, the government's trying to say, well, it's not depicting true events. The state of Israel could never have been created if there was no such thing as forced expulsions. So that's just nakedly false on its face.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And one of the big stipulations that the Palestinians have wanted in the negotiations is right of return, which of course Israel doesn't want because population-wise, the balance, wouldn't be predominantly Jewish anymore, and they don't want that.
Even if they subsumed Gaza and West Bank, that would be true. Even if they just took that that's why the one nation solution is not the solution they want.
Right.
Because they don't want to have to provide equal rights to those people.
Yeah. And quite frankly, the thing that's kind of funny, because when you see all the evangelicals supporting Israel, because of course, Book of Daniel, they basically want the Jews to be in Israel so Jesus can come back and all this bullshit.
Sure.
But the thing about it is that they're even Druze Christians are not quite full citizens either. So even there, the thing is, it's particularly bad right now because I was pointed out to particular, and maybe not uniquely, but particularly the Likud government. Benjamin Netanyahu is a criminal and a thug. How he continues to persist past all the bullshit that he does. I blame him personally for the Oslo Accords falling apart. Because basically he came in power and said, "Oh, well, that was the previous government. These treaties don't matter." I'm like, "That's not how treaties work, asshole." He doesn't want a two-state solution, and unfortunately, the world's kind of forgotten about it. We paid attention for a long time, but we've kind of forgotten about it. And of course,
the solution isn't even discussed in the halls of power anymore.
Right.
And there's an active campaign by people who do care about this issue to not consider the Palestinians a people. They'll tell you all day long there's no such thing as a Palestinian, right? And the reason for that, in my humble opinion, is because if you can erase them as a people, then you can erase them.
Well, that's part of genocide.
That's what I'm saying.
And all I can have to say on top of that is fuck the United States and fuck Israel.
So the hypocrisy here to me was very strong because I watched this movie Farha based on Paul's recommendation.
Right.
And I immediately drew a parallel between this story and that of the Diary of Anne Frank.
Right.
And Israel itself has benefited from the story of the Diary of Anne Frank and what happened in Germany with the Frank family, just because it's about Jews. Well, this story of Farha is the Diary of Anne Frank, only Anne Frank is Palestinian.
Right.
I mean, I've never read the Diary of Anne Frank, so I can't speak to that point.
She was hidden in a part of a house.
Right.
The family was hiding her away. Same fucking deal. Had to hide from the oppressive regime coming through because she would have been shot and killed in the street. And exactly what happened to Farha in this movie was basically the Diary of Anne Frank, only more
Only
graphic.
survived.
More graphic because the Diary of Anne Frank, when it came out, sensibilities with just film in general were a lot more prude. Back when adaptations of that book and even the book came out, they didn't go into all the atrocities as much as this movie. And to me, it's like stealing the thunder of the Diary of Anne Frank, and how Jews are the ones that are being oppressed by showing how they can be the oppressors.
Well, I mean, it should go without saying that I'm against ethnic cleansing, no matter the group being expelled or the group doing the expelling. I mean, to me, that's obviously no brainer. But
Israel benefits from being seen as the ones who have been, the victims of cleansing, and not having their own cleansing brought to light.
Right. And this though, to me, actually opened my eyes to something that's so freaking obvious that I can't believe I didn't see it until I watched the movie. I have been wondering for years how Zionist people justify what they're doing in the West Bank. And I've heard them say to me on the internet plenty of times, that this is all part of Israel. This is, part of the land God gave us, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I always thought that's just a convenient excuse and there's a different reason. But the thing is, that is the reason. And what I mean by that is that same exact, they're not doing anything different now than what they did in 1948.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why Israel wants the movie pulled, because there's literally no difference between what's happening in that movie and what's happening right now in West Bank. And right now in West Bank, it's not just IDF soldiers doing this kind of thing. It's actual Israeli settlers who have soldiers backing them up, but letting them do the dirty work. I mean, it's fucking awful right now what's going on in West Bank. And I can't, I'm having a hard time living with knowing it's happening,
So it's just a continual slaughter, children, anyone. There's no justice. There's no equal due process. There's problems over there with, how you get packages, every part of daily life, how you get, you're deprived of running water for your toilet, even in hospitals. It's sickening. It's an absolute genocide. There's regular ethnic cleansing, and it's Western backed, and that's a fact.
I hope that Farha gets some kind of critical recognition awards shouldn't matter, but in this case, I think it actually really does. I think this film is so important. And I've heard the cliche, this is the most important film you'll see this year. And I've heard that all my life. And I thought, yeah, just marketing. But this is seriously an important movie. Because we all know in our brain, you hear the word ethnic cleansing and you automatically know that's wrong. But you get a glimpse of what it looks like. And even through Farha's eyes, you get a glimpse of what it must feel like to watch your whole life get ripped out from under you when you didn't do a goddamn thing wrong.
Well, and the thing that irritates me the most, especially as someone who is of, at least partly Ashkenazi extraction and Jewish, ancestry, if you try to criticize what the Israeli government's doing, which is a secular organization, at least on its face, you get accused of anti-Semitism. It's like, look, that's me. That's part of my family. It's my, I'm not anti-Semitic. In fact, I'm not even anti-Israel. I'm against particularly the actions of a sovereign nation, and particularly the Likud government, or especially the Likud government, who is the biggest, in my view, the biggest perpetrator of these crimes.
In my experience, people will pull that card if they think it's useful. But also, if as a commentator on these subjects, I have learned over the fucking 25 years or whatever I've been on the internet now, that as long as you make your comments in favor of human rights, and that's where it has to come from. Speaking in favor of people's right to independent, determination. People should have the right to live without fear in their own land, right? And that's being deprived of these people.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with pointing that out. And pointing that out, if you're saying that's anti-Semitic, then you're the one telling me that Jews who are doing it, because I never said that.
Right.
I'm just saying this is happening and it's wrong.
You want me to up the ante?
Go on.
Okay. Speak in favor of human rights. Okay, I'll do it. It begs the question then. Does a genocidal state have a right to exist?
This is a what state?
A genocidal state have a right to exist? I mean, you bring up Nazi Germany and a bunch of other countries, people say no. Here, and then I'll raise the question, does the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Israel have one with what they're doing and what they continually do with their warmongering? I'll throw that one down.
I'll throw this one down, and we can parry and feign and whatever. But I mean, the concept of a right to exist is all by itself, nakedly on its face, a ill thought out concept. Your right to exist as a nation state depends on your ability to defend yourself, and that's just true. You know what I mean?
But here, the reason I bring up the question, it's not like I'm falling into that, to the stupid narratives that they put up, because they always put up human rights, like you said, but the very states that talk about human rights, they always say we're coming in to intervene, when that's not what they're doing. Like, people always say, we're coming for this, but while they're doing that, like, do we actually believe John Bolton and Henry Kissinger? And if we do, then like, let's just end it, blow up the world like the Planet of the Apes. Like, fuck it. But most people, unfortunately, it has nothing to do with parties and all that bullshit. Fuck all this. Most people are on the side of John Bolton. They all fall for it. They fall for Henry Kissinger. They fall for all the bullshit. People are stupid, and they're going to continue to be stupid. So,
well, expanding on the people are stupid thing for a second. I mean, people are particularly stupid right now. I mean, because it never ceases to amaze me how a lot of people seem to think that we're living in a Hollywood movie, right? That there's a story being played out, and I don't really know how to describe it, but they don't seem to have a genuine understanding that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way, but people are letting it be this way, and they seem to almost want it to be this way. Galen, you've mentioned many times about the basic sickness of America and how Americans, for example, who complain after a mass shooting that they don't like violence, is hilarious on its face, right? I mean, violence is an American industry, and yeah, I don't know.
It's sold in every type of form of entertainment. It's like, here's the thing that I was talking to a friend, and he was articulating film and books and everything, and he brought up, and he's a published author, and we were talking about The Punisher. But I said, and we talked about how this character, he doesn't just go around indiscriminately killing like good people, but just like John Wick doesn't go around just killing people. But I told him, you have to understand the audience. They don't give a damn who he kills. They just want to see, kill this, beat this guy up, smash this guy. Like, if you want to know who the bad guy, the real bad guy, I told him what is, it's not a character in the story. It's the fucking audience. Right. A lot of people are awful. Like, it is being sold. It is sold to them, but the thing is, they enjoy it. I mean, it's
bread and circuses.
It's epicaricacy as a society.
We've talked about this we've talked about this in a podcast before about how never mind. I lost my train of thought.
But yeah, we as humans are a violent species, and we do not, with a lot of our problems, we really don't confront a lot of the deep philosophical problems of humanity, and nothing that isn't confronted can ever be solved. And we are extremely poor at doing it. Our educational systems are horrible at cognitive developing people. to confront these issues, and we're failing more and more.
Well, because again, it's the bread and circuses thing, right? Because basically those moneyed interests we talked about earlier, they don't want us to be critical thinkers. They want us to basically follow the script and, just fall in line. And basically, these narratives are very helpful to their bottom line.
So I think I think that being able to confront the things that you're talking about is a product of a certain level of bandwidth that is afforded at higher levels of civilized society. And when I say civilized society, I don't mean high society. I mean, like, as civilization becomes more civilized, we can afford to do things that are further and further away from the Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs, right? Our time isn't consumed with having to find food and shelter and other such things, right? It's a luxury, essentially, to be able to even ponder the philosophies that lead to the solutions that you're talking about. And I guess, like, I just don't think that, I don't think that the majority, or maybe even kind of to George Carlin it a little bit, half the people out there have the actual ability to be engaged in that at the level that is necessary,
or desire.
Yeah. And then also on top of that, I think that I guess I think that even if you can, one thing that we can't actually account for in a lot of the philosophies that, are argued is scale. We just can't account for what something looks like on maybe the scale that it is conceptualized at, versus now blow that up into 1 billion people that live in your country, right? I think that it's sort of hard to do that, and we're going to, of necessity, see a lot of breakdowns before we find or eventually get to the thing, a good system, in this kind of process of global community and society. I definitely don't think, though, that it will ever be a thing that most people are involved in. I don't even think most people want to be involved in it. I mean, people basically want to go weep in a corner most of the time if you try to. It's not like raging parties are made on this kind of conversation, So
Well, what you were just saying there lines up with what Joe was saying an hour or so ago about people engaging in democracy. I mean, most people, the largest amount of people, it's a larger amount of people who could vote but don't than people who vote. And so it's my opinion that part of that can be explained by the general apathy that you're alluding to right there. And another part of it is not actually apathy in the sense that, like, they never cared. It's just like, you can look at the system, see it's so freaking broken, and go, I'm not participating in that, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but at the same time, I understand it, because you can look at it and just go, let someone else make the mess, because I don't want to participate. And
Well, there is a difference between the people who are apathetic or it's a headache and the people who are feel exiled from it,
right,
who engage in other ways.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I intend to become more activist in my daily life after I'm done doing what I'm doing right now, because my kids are grown and flown, and it occurs to me that again, to what Joe was saying earlier, I want to make a little bit more of a positive influence on this planet and on my people than I feel like I've made. And don't get me wrong, I don't feel like I've come up short from what I wanted to do. It's just that I want to do more. That's all. I feel like I could be better, and I want to be better. That's all.
Yep.
I think it's kind of weird, like speaking kind of indirectly to this a little bit. It's kind of weird. I feel like there's this phenomena that happens where that's kind of like a fatigue, because there's such an immense pressure to be involved and give to charities and do all of these things that everybody is supposed to be doing all of the time, or they're just a terrible person who's letting everyone down. That I feel like there's like this huge mental fatigue that happens with always trying to keep up, like kind of this keep up with the Joneses, but it's more like a social moray that's somehow been applied, like don't buy from here and don't like this person, and I don't know, it's sort of crazy a little bit, like it's tiring, I think.
Well, see, the thing is, I know what you get. I see what you're getting at. I think that there is kind of something, but I think that it's the bigger part of it is actually from those money and interest we were talking about earlier. Basically, those people spending the billions to keep you disengaged, they want you to be tired. They want you to kind of give up and roll over, because then they can continue to basically squeeze the blood out of everybody and go off to the bank happy. So that's the thing. It's in their interest for you to give up, and that's why they put up the roadblocks. They can't literally stop you from voting, but they'll put up all the roadblocks, and they'll put out all the propaganda to make you feel that it's not worth the effort. And so that's why I resist it. That's the part of me that, I'm no revolutionary, but I've always had a problem with authority. And mostly because, the parental units I grew up with my grandparents, I was smarter than them, and they often told me lies to try to get me to comply, and I saw through it. And so it made me kind of distrustful and hostile toward authority figures. And so if I know someone doesn't want me to do, I know there's people out there trying to stop me from participating, then I know that the way to win isn't to roll over, it's to participate more. So it's just in me to do that. That's not in everybody, unfortunately. And some people, there are some people who it was in them, and they got tired of it, right? They just, because it's easy for, we're just an individual, right? Any one of us can only do so much. It's going to take a lot of us to make things happen, and that's the only time it ever happens. And when I met with Jack in New York City a couple months ago, point I had made is like, look, direct action is important, so I don't want to denigrate direct action, but direct action alone is not enough, in the same way that electoral politics are not enough. The only way that we're ever going to make things better is by fighting and struggling and all that. And and that's why when I see people who are cynical about it, I guess why I get so hostile, especially young people, because I'm like, you guys are the idealists, man. You guys should be the ones out there, like, full of energy, ready to go, right? If you're 22 and you're cynical, man, your life is going to be fucked. Because wait till you hit mid-50s, man. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better.
I don't know. They've got a lot of reason to be cynical, in my personal opinion. I mean, they face things that were bad when I was 20, and they've only become worse. I mean, when you get out of high school, and then like from that point on, period, that you're just going to be faced with a crippling amount of college debt if you go to college. And if you don't, you're going to be looking at just unable to ever live on your own, unable to ever own a house, without great effort to do so, because the cost of living is just absolutely insane, right? Like, and even if you overcome that hurdle, you overcome it at the expense of a completely different hurdle. I mean, how crushing of spirit must that be for you to know, right? Like,
I agree, especially because for Generation Z, I mean, they have an older generation, like boomers or late boomers or whatever we want to call it, who were telling them that they need to, you just pull up their bootstraps and work really hard and everything will be. And when the game is played by different rules today than it ever used to be. And I'll give you an example. I'm in a house right now that my mom owns that was originally bought by her father in 1938, okay, for $800. That's how much a brand new, that wasn't brand new, but that's how much a whole house cost. You could buy a house for basically less than a year's wages once upon a time in this country, right? Now, a house, a mortgage is going to be what, 4 or 5 times your yearly wage, maybe more, depending on the market you're living in,
Well, and then on top of that, you've just got these interest rates.
Yeah.
Like every time I look around, I feel like we just see more and more ways that the cost of everything is being shoved off onto the end user,
right?
essentially. Like just people having to work unpaid hours or lose their jobs, you having to always pay for all of your transportation and your insurance and all of your child care and all of just like crazy rent skyrocketing. Health is absolutely insane. The biggest profit margin industry in the United States, over 400%, right? Like that's unbelievable. It's incomprehensible to even think about how much
stuff
money
like
that is
stuff
for
like that
no
is
reason.
structural.
Yeah,
Stuff
for
like that is structural. We could have a government which made a regulation that say your profit has to be no more than a certain percent, and pick the number, whatever the number is. Right? We could structure things differently, but we don't. In fact, we have structured them differently to make it this way from what they used to be. That's what pisses me off. It didn't used to be like this.
Well, right. Well, and that's the thing, and that's what I've said in the past. The whole thing about the very high top marginal rates. No one actually ever paid 91%.
Right.
No one.
Right.
The idea was basically you just didn't keep. Once you got to that point, you just didn't keep more money. You found like you would plow it back into the business. You would do other things that would write up. You pay your people, or you train your workers better. You'd have a pension plan. You do all these other things to defer your taxes, so you wouldn't pay 91%. That's literally what it's for.
Right.
But unfortunately, people. Well, again, we're talking about those moneyed interest, right? Those money interest people convinced us as a populace that was limiting freedom, and freedom is the most important thing, and we're about freedom. Of course, if you have no money, you really have no economic freedom. How free are you really? But then they also went further and convinced you that you could be that billionaire, you could be that ultra rich guy, which of course no, even I've had people say to me about Zuckerberg. Oh, Zuckerberg, he started, he's a college kid who again came from a wealthy family, went to an influence mill. You can't be Mario Lopez, go in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and invent Facebook. Even if you have the resources to do it, it never fucking happened because you don't have the connections, you don't have all the ins and outs that are going to get you what you need. So it's all predicated on a complete horseshit. And actually, like you said, it's actually worse now to a certain degree than it was, because before, when you were talking before that charts about the as the economy went up, wages went up, and wages have been stagnant relative to inflation for quite a long time. But the thing is, and that's why I get what you're saying, Amy, about the cynicism, but I'm like, people who haven't really participated in that, it's like, well, yes, you can look at the mountain, but if you don't try to climb it, you're never going to get over it. An anthill or a mountain doesn't make a difference if you're not willing to climb it or try to climb it.
Well, yeah.
Everything
is hard if you never try it.
Right, and young people have a much better tools for organizing than we ever did when we were their age.
It's interesting because I feel like one of the things that I have observed, at least around me, since COVID, I guess I perceive it as being somewhat related to this topic of just like how breathtakingly, exhaustingly difficult it is to do. You overcome, like you can't change the laws, can't beat the system. It is too big, too powerful. And I feel like especially like once COVID happened, and then it was just like this huge sort of mental weight on so many people for a bunch of different reasons, right? And then now in the aftermath of that, as things, people are getting together again and stuff is opened up, and I feel like I'm seeing this weird after effect that instead of trying to change things, right? Like, I mean, maybe people still are, but it seems like what they're doing instead is just literally not giving a fuck anymore about stuff that just doesn't need to be given a fuck about. Nobody, I mean, nobody cares if you are smoking pot, where you got it from, was it legal or illegal. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're doing shrooms, and nobody cares if you're doing lines of coke in the bathroom. They're just like, whatever. I mean, the same, and it's, I feel like it is like that with everything. I feel like like even things that are just like petty crime, and I would extend this to even the cops, where I think the cops were kind of lackadaisical where I lived before. I feel like they're just like, completely now, just like, don't even bother calling them for some things, because it's just going to be, there's just going to be nothing there, right? Like,
Right.
and it's just sort of strange, like, when it comes to like common citizens interacting with one another, the things that people just talk about now, that they're just like, fuck it, whatever, I don't even care, like, people are so much more open with, oh, here's what I do, that used to be, 3 or 4 years ago, like, you didn't really want to talk about that unless you knew you were in, proper company or whatever. People don't even care, and not only do they not care, it's kind of okay for them to not care, because ain't nobody gonna come get them either.
Right.
And it's almost like there's this weird sort of what do you call it, like a sub market sort of just like this subculture of just people being like, yeah, who cares, whatever, we went to the rave, we were on Molly, everybody had a good time. If you have a problem with it, go fuck yourself, dude, not hurting anybody, like, it's just like this prevailing attitude. Nobody has the mental bandwidth anymore. It's like everybody's so exhausted from having to work 3 jobs just so they can afford a rent that's $2,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, or
Right.
something crazy like that. So
Mhm.
it's just, it's ridiculous. I don't know. Like, do you guys like observe that though? Do you just observe that people just don't care about certain things anymore?
I think that the way things work at the moment is everyone's plates are so full they don't have a lot of room to care,
Yeah, for sure.
because your
I
plate.
saw it coming out of the bubble because I effectively stayed in the same house for 2.5 years. Like, I hardly went out at all. And I
Right.
was very responsible about the COVID thing. And then when I finally decide, okay, I've got my 4th vaccination, I'm going to go, see some clients in the same room. I get out to this agency where everyone's been doing that the whole time. And when I tell them about how I was being responsible, they look at me like with pity, like I was brainwashed, like I should never have believed that COVID was a thing.
Right. I get that when I wear a mask in Safeway sometimes. They look
And
at you
so,
like a bug.
yeah, nobody wears a mask there. And I am the only clinician that has taken my clients outside because they were coughing, and said, "No, I'll see you outside, but we'll sit on chairs outside and talk, but I'm not going to do it, in an enclosed space, and I'm going to be upwind of you, damn it, you know." But yeah, I know that in those small enclosed rooms, that even wearing a mask, it's not going to do much, because
Right.
I'm still going to be,
Yeah.
getting exposed. So I take it outside. Now it's freezing outside, so now I'm just going to have to make the decision to not see people.
Right.
If they come in and they're coughing, they're already wearing their own mask because they know that they're in a bad way. I don't care if they have mandates to meet, that they're going to get in trouble if they don't get their therapy. And I'll just, tell whoever calls, hey, yeah, they were sick and I turned them away.
Michael, have you tested positive at any point over the past 2.5 years?
No.
Okay, well done. You're probably one of the few people I know who's never tested positive ever.
Well, I can say that for the first 2.5 years of it, I was being very, very diligent. And before I ventured out, I had already had my third COVID shot. And I've gotten my fourth one since. I've never felt like I had any of the symptoms that people are talking about with COVID. And I might have been.
Prove it. Prove it. Get a paper clip and stick it to your shoulder.
But I do feel like it'd be impossible for me to have not been exposed because the clients that I see, they live sometimes.
Michael, you got exposed at that baseball game last year, if nowhere else.
No, see, the public spread was low, and people were actually
But there's
testing.
50,000 people, Michael. Come on.
Yeah, people were actually testing and turning in the results then. Now, people don't even bother with testing unless they need the test to show their boss.
Right.
Their boss is going to require it. And even then, they don't input that data to, the database that tracks this shit. So basically what the people who do put it in, we have to have like this multiplier of how much undercount we think we have.
Well, I think what they're doing now, Michael, is they're testing the water to find out what the community rate of transmission is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wastewater testing is the best way that we have right now, and it's actually, it's not a lagging indicator; it's a current indicator because hospitals are the lagging indicator, and then deaths lag after that.
Right, right.
So wastewater is the best, most current data you have.
I find myself wishing we could go back to the very early days of COVID, not because of the COVID, but because everybody stayed indoors. And I've never, ever been like in a world where going outside in the city was so quiet.
Right.
It was unbelievable. It was amazing. I loved it so much. It was like I could walk out. No, it was like, so I like to drive. I like to drive through big, vast, open areas where there isn't anything, because when you can just kind of look out on the land all the way to
pretend it's like a million years ago.
What?
I like to do that and pretend it's like a million years ago because there's nothing around, no houses, no lights,
Yeah. I like it because it's like it helps my brain think. Like I can just kind of look out, and I feel like my brain can kind of imagine things more easily, right? There's just, it's like my brain can go out open up with the openness. And when those first couple months of COVID, when just you could go on the freeway in Seattle at 2 p.m. and there was nobody. You could actually drive on the road in both directions, see zero cars. Never in my life. It was a phenomenon. Like, this place is known for its traffic, right? And it was just, I'll just never forget it. Like, and I don't know, it was like such a relief on my brain to not be assaulted the second that I walked out the door by just tons of noise and input and lights and people talking and animals doing whatever and cars driving and sirens going, and just like, oh, all of that was just gone. And I could like go outside and I could think while I was out there, like broadly think, right? Not just like have to think inside of this. Oh, it was amazing. I wish we could go back to that. I wish I could just like have
the whole world was different. I mean, all the animals in Britain came down out of the mountains and into the villages and stuff like that, for example. And I know stuff like that was happening all over Europe. There was in Wales, in Britain, there was a whole bunch of mountain goats came down into the villages because there was no people to dissuade them from doing so. It was pretty cool. Hey, listen, I want to wrap the show up as close to 3 hours as possible. So has anybody got a topic that's been pressing that they've been waiting to talk about, but we haven't got around to because we've been having much more interesting conversations?
I mean, I kind of was thinking earlier today and yesterday, because, bumped into this issue with my like 3 of my cats all having to go to the vet, and 2 of them for what are ostensibly going to be very expensive things that I don't really have the money for all at once. And this led to, this is kind of a setup for what I'm about to say, but this led to this, somebody had posted that, do you want to do a GoFundMe on my Facebook? And I didn't respond to them in public, but the answer was no. She's a friend of mine, so I just responded to her in private. But it got me thinking how another friend, like this month, this is part of the reason why, harkening back to the beginning of the show, I'm just not in holiday spirit. Like in our community, her dad just died, and so her mom is doing a GoFundMe for the funerary costs. And I guess that this got me thinking that, don't you think that this is actually an indicator of our economic distress when people can't do the basic things, a burial for somebody who has died, right? Just a regular old, we're not talking in a mausoleum. We're talking in a coffin in the ground, or maybe even it's just cremation for all we know, right? Like, when people can't afford to do, we must crowdfund each other in order to pay for this basic stuff, because people aren't being paid to do their actual jobs, the things that they should be being paid for by the people that have the money. And instead, those people get to keep all the money while we have to form little communistic communes of people to help each other. Not that I'm not saying communism is bad, but what I'm saying is, why is it that the public has to band together to keep each other out of like
well, I mean, the short answer to your question of why is it like this is because we, the people, have allowed this situation to develop. We have elected bad people who basically do the bidding of their donors instead of the bidding of their voters. And to Joe's point earlier, as long as more people don't vote than vote, they'll be able to get away with that. You only cannot get away with that if your voting block is so huge that the voters' power actually outweighs the donors' power.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, and again, it goes back to what I was saying before, that, people, that worn out people feeling that people have, it's kind of strange. So see, that's the thing. So from that perspective, as much as I'm not in favor of an actual revolution, I get the impetus to move in that direction, because people they kind of feel like that's the only option they have.
Yeah.
It's not, but they feel like it is, because they've been convinced. And this is the one danger point for the people of those moneyed interests that are doing these things we're talking about, because it can come to the point where if they push people enough, whether it's a good idea or not, people will head in that direction. In fact, I remember having a conversation.
I was just going to interrupt you there for a second, Joe, because there's overt efforts to make that happen already. As far as the former guy is concerned, for example, he's literally called for a civil war,
right,
to get himself reinstated. I mean, come on. Right. So the topic of a civil war, and we've discussed this before, is one that is a hot topic in certain parts of extreme right wingism.
And right wing and leftism. Maybe it's on both sides, really. I mean, I
suppose so. But I'll tell you this, right? I mean, these people are out in the open and already tried one insurrection. So
absolutely.
I know you agree. It's nowhere near equal, right? But I mean, right. Yeah.
But but here's the thing. I remember something I was going to say earlier tonight, and I think the conversation moved on. But one of the reasons for the New Deal was that, obviously the world was in a worldwide depression. Things were really bad, and there were both fascist and socialist movements around the world. Basically, you had the two extremes. It's like, hey, the current order doesn't work, and whether if I'm a left-wing person, I'm going to go to socialism or communism. If I'm a right-wing person, I'm going to go to fascism, but I'm going to get away from whatever this other thing is. And the idea for the New Deal was really that they were afraid that communism would take hold here. So it's okay, let's have something that's vaguely socialist to kind of stave things off, and actually was very successful, right? It improved the economy, got us out of the depression, and that actually helped build the infrastructure of the country that actually led to the prosperity of the 50s.
Yeah.
And of course that's the reason why since then there's been this attack on anything even vaguely socialistic by those moneyed interests, because we tried the socialistic thing and it worked. Now we got to get people to be against it, otherwise they'll keep wanting more of it.
Well, it's because of FDR that there's a thing such as term limits for presidents, because that's a Republican initiative that was brought in as an amendment to the Constitution, because they never wanted that shit to happen again, because they lost the presidency 5 times in a row, 4 times to FDR and once to Truman after that.
Right.
And I mean, that's how fucking bad the Republicans fucked up in from the economic crash of 1928 onwards. So by the time 1932 election came around, I haven't got the numbers memorized in my head, so this is a rough. But I think the Democratic gain was something like 90 people in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, something like that.
And a couple of dozen senators, and I think like 19 governorships, and fuck knows how many state legislatures flipped. I mean, God, so the whole country said fuck you to the Republicans because they screwed up so bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have happened if there was such a thing as the internet. I think the fact that the internet is here now kind of makes these false narratives run away with a life of their own a lot of the time. And so a concentration of indignation isn't the same as it used to be. I mean, basically, once upon a time, back in 1932, those guys were clearly the fucking people who ruined everything. We're not going to give them another chance to ruin it more. Out you go, right? And we still had a viable 2-party system, but there were supermajorities in both houses of Congress and the presidency. And I understand the reason. I'm just going off on a slight tangent. I understand the reason for term limits as regards the presidency, because if you don't have term limits, a president like FDR can stack the courts for 2 generations, right? So maybe that's a reason for term limits. But generally speaking, I don't like the concept of term limits because, frankly, if I think the person is representing my interests and doing a good job at it, why shouldn't I be able to reelect them?
Right. Now, here's another thing, too, about those money interests and FDR and all that. Now, one of the things that you may have heard this narrative over years, but one of the big things the right wing has tried to champion for quite a long time is that, well, you know what? Hoover wasn't so bad, and because he was basically kind of a laissez-faire, kind of let the system fix itself.
J. Edgar Hoover?
No.
Herbert Hoover.
Oh.
So his thing was this very laissez-faire approach to it, and like, well, the system will fix itself, like magic. That right wing, like, the system just, business cycles, and like it's all like magic, as if it wasn't a causal, and there's no causal chain to any of it. And there's some evidence. Well, yeah. So that this evidence, they keep saying there's this evidence that if things had just left well and known, it would have come back by itself, or it would have come back even faster, and all this bullshit. I'm like, no, there was no fucking evidence that I was coming back any faster. That's why they did what they did, and because people, and we were heading for potentially violent, maybe not revolution, but revolutionary type movements, because people were getting stretched to the limits.
If I may, Joe. I just wanted to say, Joe is referencing anarcho-libertarian historical revisionism, which is like FDR's folly, and to go back through that. That's, by the way, a horribly written book. It's trash. I mean, I don't mind when someone has a well-written book with regards to history and politics. That's fine, but that book is, if you look it up, I mean, I read a lot of books that let's just say I don't surround my stuff with everything that I agree with. So I read it thoroughly. I research the books of whatever it is and go through it. So, but that's what Joe is taking apart, like wants to take a hammer to those fuckers. And then they believe that if we just leave it alone, everything's fine. It's Harvey Weinstein will work himself out. It'll be okay.
What? No.
Oh yeah. It's complete bullshit. I mean, the thing is, especially this idea, the idea of the business cycle. Again, this is part of their other part of their narrative. Again, it's literally that. Well, the things swing one way, they swing another way. Well, that's true, but it doesn't happen for no reason.
Yeah, it's not in a
I
vacuum.
don't even understand how anybody can make that kind of an argument. We literally live in a world of laws and regulations for a reason, right?
And to build on Sister Danger, those are the learned lessons of human history.
Right.
However, we also live in ultra statist societies that are corrupt as fuck, and we're stupid that we will do anything a commercial says. We call ourselves voters, but we would also go and be directed, and we won't even know it because we're all fucking stupid.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that happens then with the supposed business cycle is that when things are going well, there gets to be this thing that, you know, people don't want to miss the boat, right? So, okay, the housing market's blowing up. People are making a lot of money in houses. Well, I want to do that too. So I'm going to jump in. But, you know, they jumped into the market near the later part of the period without any knowledge or forethought of, hey, is there actually this kind of high price house I'm buying that I think I'm going to flip and make a profit on? Is it actually really worth what I'm buying it for? Am I really going to see this? You know, but there's this, it was irrational exuberance, I think is the term I heard. That, okay, well, this is going to happen forever, right? It's always going to just, you know, it's just going to keep going up. So I know it doesn't matter when I buy in because I'll always be able to make my money back later. But of course, at a certain point, you know, whatever it is, whether it's the housing market, the tech market, the stock market, whatever it is, eventually it reaches a point where, hey, no one can afford all this shit anymore because they basically bought more than they really could afford. And then it starts to collapse. So this isn't for no reason. It happened for a reason. It's not magic, you know. It's not like the precession of the sun or the precession of the earth that can, you know, that you can time on, you know, that happens for natural reasons. This happens because of what we do. It's because of our behavior, and because we don't when we take those. There has been protections at various times to prevent that or to slow it down, and every time we deregulate and take those protections away, we get another bubble and shit blows up. So like when you had the tech bubble blow up in the early 2000s, you know, you had people that were, you know, because they want, hey, you know, money, everyone's making money buying, you know, tech stocks, right? So even though the tech companies weren't making anywhere near the profit that would warrant the amount of people were buying, so they're buying in. And then people who were coming in late, well, the only way I can make a lot, because it's expensive now, the only way I'm making a lot of money is to borrow money and then buy on margin. And if you're anyone who doesn't know about
right,
when you buy on margin, you're borrowing as it is. So you basically took borrowed money, put it into a system, and then borrowed against that money. Well, what happens is, if you ever saw Trading Places at the end of when there's a margin call, basically a margin call is you've borrowed money and the market maker says, hey, you have to pay me back either in the stock that you sold or you have to give me cash. And if you don't have it, they come and repossess your shit. Well, they do a margin call on you, and the money you got was borrowed in the first fucking place. You definitely don't have money to cover.
Right.
So then now you lose those assets, and then everybody you owed loses because the only thing you have now is to go bankrupt because you lost whatever shit you had left. You lost it all. And now they all lost money because, you know, basically you took them down with them. And this happened throughout the economy, and that's when the bubble burst.
Yeah. I'd like to make a completely unrelated point, and I'm sorry about that, Joe. It's not that I wasn't listening, because I did listen, but I have an unrelated point I want to make. You know, the stock market crashed in, what was it, 1928 or 29? And yeah, was it 27?
29, you're right, 29.
Yeah, there's 28. Anyway, and when it did, some people lost so much money because they've been buying on the margins for so long. They lost so much money that they literally jumped out of high-rise buildings to commit suicide.
Right.
Yep.
How much money would you have to lose to do that? Because Elon Musk lost $11 billion 2 weeks ago. And as far as I know, he hasn't jumped out of any fucking buildings.
Well, maybe they did it because they had an insurance policy on their life and they thought that money might go to their family.
Right, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though. He's got so much money that, you know, you can lose $11 billion in a week and you're still ripping in cash.
Yeah.
I'm so cynical right now that I actually think that their next move, if they're going to be as evil as they've done in the past, just like when they made it so that student loans couldn't be part of your bankruptcy, they're going to make it so if you took out a mortgage or especially a home equity loan, that is not bankruptable on. So you got this home that went up in value, and then you took out a loan in order to repair it so you could maybe sell it for a profit, but then the market crashed. They're going to make it so you can't bankrupt out of that loan, so because the bankers are going to make their money, and the bankers are lobbying all those congressmen, right?
Wow.
So they're going to close that loophole of you not having all of the risk on you by taking away your right to bankruptcy, just like they did with the student loans.
Well,
This
it's already,
market has run
there's already
away.
a problem with investment companies buying big blocks of houses and stuff, you know?
Oh,
And this is what, and that's caused rents to go up because, of course,
Right.
people who want a house and can't afford one are buying, and now they're renting, and then now the rents go up. And this is again this. Here's the thick part is there's going to be a bubble that's going to burst. Unfortunately, the institutional investors who caused this are not going to face most of it. It's going to be the small time person who got tricked. Like, think about all those TV shows that are on TV about, flip this house and all this kind of thing. Oh, you can buy a house and fix it up, and then you get these people who know dick about renovating a house, who spend money, and then they're going to go bust when things shrink.
Joe, are you saying that they might artificially cause a housing bubble that might cost the entire economy everything, but they'll still walk away as rich people? There can't possibly be a precedent for that.
Well, this is, if you remember, it might feel like I'm beating up on Mike, and I don't mean it to be. But when the whole, what was that stock? The GameStop, was it Mike? Was that the one that was going crazy?
Yes.
All the stocks.
Yeah, all of that was an elaborate pump and dump. All of it. And so people again, and then you get that irrational exuberance. It's going to keep going up. I got it. I want to get on this train. And so it went up and up and up and up. And hey, if you sold when it was still going up or when it started to peak, you did fine. If you held on to it, you got fucked in the ass. But the thing is, somebody still made, like, remember, Duke and Duke still make the commissions, right? Somebody still made money. Somebody still made money on that shit, even if you lost your shirt.
Yeah,
I love that movie so much. I haven't seen that in a long time, but I could recite it almost word for word. It's great. It's one of my favorite things. It sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies. I told you he'd understand.
Well, the thing. What's kind of funny is looking at what the history of what the stock market was for and what it's become. And again, it should be regulated way more than it is. The original purpose of the stock market was that back in the days of cattle drives, the cattle drives would either go to railheads in Kansas City or they would go to Chicago.
Yeah,
the ranchers would take their herds in the fall, and they say, "Here, I got my fattened cows," and then go sell them. And buyers in East Coast and West Coast were going to come in and they'd buy their stock. The thing is that you could have a bad drive, right? You could end up like, a bunch of cows die along the way, break legs, whatever, don't make it. Or you may have had a bad year fattening them up. Maybe
rustlers.
Was that?
Rustlers.
That's right, rustlers. Now, on the flip side, and now here's the thing: if a whole bunch of ranchers have a bad year, well, now the price of beef is going to go through the roof. So for the buyers, it's terrible because, oh my God, now it's 3 or 4 times the price. You're going to put me out of business because I can't afford to sell steaks at that price, back home. So the whole point of the and this is where futures were created. The idea was that, okay, we're going to agree in advance that you're going to provide me so many head of cattle at such a price. It doesn't matter whether you're a good year or a bad year. So some years you're going to make out, some years you're going to be a little bit less. And the same thing in the buyers. But the idea is that you could both sides could count on what they were going to get in revenue, and what they were going to get in purchasing. And it really did work to level prices, because you used to have these ridiculous price swings. So it really leveled off prices, and it was good for the economy. But initially, and that's why it's called the stock market, because it was literally about selling livestock.
Right.
But then you got speculators who said, well, I'm not a rancher and I'm not a buyer of beef or pork or whatever it is. But I want to buy in, because if I buy in a year where the prices are low, but then it's a bad year and it's hard to get beef, hey, I'll make money, because all of a sudden whatever I have, I can will become more valuable, and I can make more money in the secondary market. It's similar. Some people thought, hey, if the price is going high, I can basically, I want to speculate to sell. Say I want to sell at a high price, and then when the price drops, I can buy it back and cover my position. So that's what they did. They basically selling contracts, and once they allowed speculation in the market, it blew away the whole point of having the stock market in the first place. It's the same thing with the housing bubble. The housing bubble happened because of speculators.
So I have about one each of all the stocks, right? Only Nokia is doing good today. I don't know why. But when I originally put in was around $300, and I'm down to 188.
Wow.
Because stocks are not doing good right now. And I track those stocks by owning a share of each one. So it puts them all on one page. I got rid of all the rest of what I had, but I hold on to one share each just to be able to track them and be part of this movement and watch it die. I've stood over many a movement that has petered out.
Yeah. Well, that's why anytime I see a movement, that's the thing too about that exuberance. So basically, by the time you see it, it's probably already too late to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get lucky if you're the first when it first hits. Hits the airwaves. People say, "Hey, this thing is happening." You jump in immediately, you might get somewhere. But if you stick in too long, you're going to vaporize because basically someone is going to the people who have the big industrial the large scale investors. Once it goes up, they're going to go, oh, time to get out and make my money, and they jump and they pull out, and then the price starts to collapse, and then you get the panic sellers, and they cause the market to collapse even more.
I'll tell you right now, the latest pump and dump that I've seen that was successful was it was a cryptocurrency just like Shiba Inu or the Elon Doge, like all the different permeations of Elon's name in cryptocurrency tokens were all going up the same time as Dogecoin was. Okay. Right now, this past month, the World Cup soccer tournament was going on, and each team had a coin named after it. Had nothing to do with the actual team.
Right.
But if you had went out and just like at the beginning of the FIFA World Cup, if you had just picked up all these tokens and just watched as these grifters pumped them up, you could have made some money.
Right.
Wow.
But now that I'm telling you, the only way that is through me like after the fact. If you bought them now, they're only going to go to nothing. They're only going to decline from here on out. And when I heard about it, the pump and dump was already over.
Yeah.
Right. Listen, friends, I want to end the show pretty soon, so let's wrap it up. Joe, what were you going to say?
I was going to say two things. One, real quick, is that you said about Trading Places. It is a great movie, and I wish there's a lot of people who they watch the end of that movie and they kind of get with it, but they don't really understand what's going on, and that's a problem because really understanding what's really going on and how that where you're buying and selling on margin and all that, how that works, and I think people would be shocked if they found out if they really understood it. But I'm thinking that's another one of those things that they don't teach us because they don't want us to know. They want it to be that club where they can manipulate. They can basically use our ignorance to manipulate us to basically give them what they want. Like with Elon Musk, real quick, I felt what he was trying to do with Twitter, where he basically said he was going to buy it and they started bashing it. It's a kind of inverse pump and dump. I call it a bash and cash, where basically you say, "Oh, I want to buy this thing." And then you come up, oh, it's horrible, it's terrible. Get the price to depress, and then buy it up cheaper than what you were originally going to pay for it.
Well,
He did the opposite of that, though. He paid 3 times the value of Twitter for Twitter.
He's in a position that he knows his platform is so huge now, and he can affect the price of stocks. He can just tell a few friends to short something because he's about to talk about it.
Right.
Totally. I mean, he's got so much power with what he's doing right now. And we could have talked about that for half an hour on the show easily, but I didn't really want to do too much Elon talking because if you're on Twitter, you hear about Elon way too much. Trust me. I wish the subject would kind of go away. It's like Elon Musk is the new Donald Trump of Twitter. That's
I, I changed my Twitter handle to Felon Brusque
right.
because everyone was going to Elon Musk and he was banning them. So okay, well I will do. I'll go Felon Brusque.
Yeah.
And Mike, my Ethereum, I did buy the Ethereum, 20 shares of Ethereum. It's down 80%.
All right.
Well,
Okay, partner.
I-
Oh, yeah, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say this is the stack that I have left of holiday cards for this year. They're Krampus cards. They've got Krampus on them. I will send them to whoever wants one if you guys want a holiday card. I
Oh,
can
nice.
give you the link to put. I don't know if I can put links in the YouTube chat, but I could send it to you if you want. This was a stack of 250 and it's now down to about half of that, maybe a little bit less than half of that. So my hands hurt.
That's very sweet. Thank you. All right. Well, hey, goodbye, everybody. And thank you to the audience for being so good natured. And we'll see you again next time on the Dinner Club. Ciao for now.
See ya. Hope you have a good time.
There, now we out.